Well, hello there. Today I want to talk about a movie that got roasted all over the internet on its debut in September of 2024, Netflix's Uglies, based on a book series by Scott Westerfeld of the same name. Most people watched the movie having no context for what it was, since many had not read the series, and this lack of context led to the movie flopping pretty heavily. Although of course, this is not the only reason it flopped, but people being confused about the premise certainly didn't help. Enter me, an obsessed fan of Uglies that has read the series many times, and only recently decided to get rid of the books I've had since childhood. It was terrible timing. I was very excited when I found out Uglies was going to be a movie, since I always felt it should be a movie. However, I also knew book-to-movie adaptations have terrible track records, so I initially didn't watch it assuming it would be horrible. Plus, I had canceled my Netflix subscription because who can afford that in this economy, am I right? But after watching it get raked over the coals all over the internet, curiosity did get the better of me, and I decided to use my $0 to not only renew Netflix, but repurchase the books I thought I wouldn't need anymore. After seeing the movie for myself, I have come to a couple of conclusions. First, most people completely missed the point, which is not their fault since the movie actively undermines its own message. Second, Netflix did this series dirty, and I would like to speak on behalf of the original story to defend it, because I think it deserves more credit than it got, and I think I have some things to say that have not been said yet. If you enjoyed this movie, I am sorry to say that I did not enjoy it, and I maintain that my gut instinct to avoid it was right. However, I like a ton of things that other people hate, so this is really not me trying to put you down. I do encourage you to read the books though, if you haven't done so, because I think you'll really like them if you enjoyed the movie. This video took so long to make because of how insanely detailed it is. The aim is to compare the movie to the book in every single scene, beat for beat, dialogue for dialogue, and to point out every single difference I can find. And there are a lot. I'm gonna start with describing a scene from the movie and then immediately going to its counterpart in the book, breaking everything down obsessively before moving on to the next scene. That does mean there will be a lot of jumping back and forth between the two stories, but I plan to edit it in a way that is easy to follow. And yes, I will be nitpicky. I am a nitpicky person, but I will be nitpicking both the book and the movie where they deserve it, and be as unbiased as I can. After this side-by-side comparison, I'll give you a review of the movie and talk about all the things I think work and all the things I think don't work. So, throw me on in the background, get comfy, and build yourself a nice dirt mansion in Minecraft while you listen to me ramble for the next 2 hours about a series no one cares about except for me from the early 2000s. So for the completely uninitiated, Uglies is a dystopian trilogy written by Scott Westerfeld in 2005. It came out before dystopian novels blew up. In fact, it actually came out before The Hunger Games. And the 3 novels, Uglies, Pretties, and Specials, follow a teen girl named Tally Youngblood. There is a 4th book called Extras, but we're not going to talk about that one for now. In the first book, Tally lives in a world where everyone is born ugly. On your 16th birthday, you get an operation that makes you pretty. This is determined by scientists who get to decide what's pretty and what's not. This system has apparently cured war, disease, and poverty, creating a happy, perfect society with absolutely 0 consequences. All Tally wants to do is be pretty, but when her friend Shay goes missing, she's told she must find her or she won't get the operation. That is the absolute bare bones gist of the plot. And the Netflix movie follows this first book in the series, but it attempts to mix elements from the later books as well. Scott Westerfeld himself was actually involved in the making of the movie, and he even cameoed in it. And one of the things a lot of people don't know is Joey King was the one that actually pitched the movie to Netflix because she read the books and she liked them. And I think it's cool that she's a fan. I don't know if people like Joey King. I don't know anything about her, but she is apparently an Uglies fan. Netflix hopes to adapt the full trilogy, but there's been no news on if they're going to continue or not. If they do, I will definitely have things to say about it. And now we can finally start the scene-by-scene comparison. All my life, I wanted to be pretty. That's the first line in the movie, and it's Tally speaking directly to the audience. The intro continues. I thought it would change everything. My story today began in the past. Hundreds of years ago, people became overly reliant on fossil fuels. They squandered Earth's natural resources, and the planet quickly descended into chaos and war. We call those people Rusties. A few of the very best scientists were tasked with salvaging what was left of civilization, and they came up with something revolutionary, a plan for a truly renewable power source. But this didn't solve the world's biggest biggest problem: human nature. People's differences continue to create classes, clans, countries, which prevented them from their shared humanity. So they came up with a radical solution: the transformation. Everyone on their 16th birthday undergoes a life-changing operation to become their most perfect self. And when everyone is perfect, conflict melts away. Everyone is healthy, happy, pretty. But then there are the rest of us, awaiting our operation. Until then, we're less than, ignored. People call us uglies. So a lot of the information is already either different from the book or not revealed until way later. For example, we don't get an explanation of the Rusty collapse until page 277. And the story there is that someone invented a bacterium that ate petroleum. And no one knows who did it, but it spread in the air like mold spores and ignited the petroleum on contact, setting the world ablaze. It's believed to be something malicious that someone did. Additionally, the orchids are not a renewable resource invented by the city. They are in the book, but they symbolize something else entirely. And lastly, yes, you do get the operation on your 16th birthday, but uglies are never seen as less than or ignored. To them, being ugly is just a life stage, and you're in school for that entire life stage. So here are the first few lines in the book. The early summer sky was the color of cat vomit. Of course, Tally thought, you'd have to feed your cat only salmon-flavored cat food for a while to get the pinks right. The scudding clouds did look a bit fishy, rippled into scales by a high-altitude wind. As the light faded, deep blue gaps of night peered through like an upside-down ocean, bottomless and cold. Any other summer, a sunset like this would have been beautiful. But nothing had been beautiful since Peris turned pretty. Losing your best friend sucks, even if it's only for 3 months and 2 days. I think some people think the first line in the book is weird. I personally like it because I will never forget it. It's been stuck in my head for like decades. And I think it's good that a line sticks out so much that you never forget it, for better or for worse. I've never heard anyone describe the sky as the color of cat vomit, so that to me is pretty unique. Obviously, I know they couldn't really convey that in the movie, but I strongly disagree with the movie starting off right away with a giant exposition dump that no one's going to remember and feel completely overwhelmed by. So just to be clear, the book starts after Tally's best friend Peris has turned pretty, but the movie starts a little earlier, when she still has Peris there with her, and they're both ugly together. The issue with the scene-by-scene comparison is that the movie goes in a completely different direction sometimes, and that is the case with the whole beginning part. So right now, we're only talking about the movie, since this all happened before the events of the book. So after the whole exposition dump explaining the world, the first real scene of the movie is Tally looking at herself in a mirror. She tells the mirror to make her pretty, and the mirror gives her what appears to be, I guess, an Instagram filter, which a lot of people had a problem with because being pretty actually involves a lot more than that in this world, like we'll see later. The mirror tells her this is her 732nd morpho, and it shows just how obsessed Tally is with her appearance. Tally is inside her room in the ugly dorms where the uglies live, which is a boarding school, and it's actually pretty accurate to what I imagined. The dorms aren't meant to be colorful or flashy, just basic functioning buildings, mostly in gray, very institutional. Now, in contrast, there's New Pretty Town, which is shown outside her window. New Pretty Town is also faithful to the book in that it is bright and beautiful, there's always a party atmosphere, and there's fireworks every night. New Pretty Town is where you live when you first turn pretty, and all of the uglies are just dying to be there. The movie doesn't explain the different life stages, but you see the book explains that eventually you age into a middle pretty where you get a second operation, and that's typically when you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and eventually you turn into a crumbly, which is their version of old, but you still look fabulous. Tally uses an interface ring to communicate and interact with the technology around her. She gets a message on this ring from her friend Peris, and together they sneak up to the dorm roof to spy on the pretties in New Pretty Town, a common pastime for uglies. They pull out these glasses or goggles, they have crazy zoom on them so that they can get all the little details of the pretties partying. You see, they're not allowed to be there, and they're actually separated by a river that divides the pretty part from the ugly part, but they still like to watch them. In the movie, we only get to see very short clips of people standing in a crowd and laughing, and also we can hear them laughing, so that's interesting. I guess the glasses also have a microphone, a crazy powerful microphone, or maybe it's attached to a live feed, I don't know. But then Tally says to Peris, they're having so much fun, as the camera zooms in on this very happy man. Not one single person looks awkward or left out, or just isn't smiling. I wish I was there so much it hurts. Her and Peris then talk about how he's getting his surgery tomorrow, because he's 3 months older than Tally, and therefore turning 16 sooner. They talk about how he's going to lose his giant nose, which is the trait that he's known for. And Tally's trait is that she has squinty eyes, hence their nicknames Nose and Squint. This is common for uglies to pick something they deem unattractive about each other and make it into their personality for the duration of their uglyhood. It's like a tradition. One line I thought was funny was when Tally said to Peris, "No matter how beautiful they make you, the ghost of that giant nose will haunt you forever." She does make him promise not to get rid of the scar on his hand since they have matching scars. I don't know why the movie did this because in the books, scars are not permitted under the pretty standard. They do get rid of them whether you want to or not. Peris then tries to confess his very obvious romantic feelings for Tally, but a warden's hovercar scares them off, and they have to leave before they get caught. Peris makes Tally promise she's not going to get into trouble, and that 1 month from now, he will meet her at the bridge connecting the two sides of town. So Tally sneaks back into her dorm room. The sun is now coming up. She hasn't slept all night. This whole time, her bed thought she was sleeping in it because she had a space heater in there to trick it. This isn't explicitly stated in the movie, but you see every single piece of technology in this world will tell on you if you're not following the rules. So the kids end up doing all sorts of things to get around it. She ends up going straight to the school's morning assembly, which is a graduation ceremony for the Uglies that are turning pretty that day, like Peris. Peris races her to the assembly room, and Tally says, "When I get longer legs, I'll destroy you." I bring this up because, interestingly, in the books, she's taller than the pretty average, so they would not, in fact, give her longer legs. When they sit down, Tally overhears some kids talking about how a group of them ran away to a place called the Smoke. One of the kids is known by the nickname Skinny, and this girl's real name is Shay, but we're not going to find that out until later, but she is important. But one of the boys, Dex, is insisting that the Smoke isn't real, and Shay says Noah, a guy called David, took them personally, and then Dex mocks her because he doesn't think David's real either. But Shay defends him, saying he's a revolutionary. The ceremony then starts on the stage with a giant hologram of a woman appearing. Her name is Dr. Nia Cable, and she is the district governor. She appears as a pretty woman, like all adults in this world, who has had the operation. And here's the speech she gives, because it's relevant to the opening words of the movie. "For those of you turning 16 today, you are truly on the cusp of a metamorphosis. That change starts with one elegant procedure that will make you perfect both inside and out. You'll be beautiful and free from hatred and discrimination based on the way that you look. I am so excited for you to take your place in the city and live the life you have been waiting for. Will tomorrow's pretties please come forward?" I just wanted you to know that this is overlapping information with the beginning of the movie, and it's the second exposition dump in under 7 minutes. That is all. Tally says goodbye to Peris, and they again agree to meet at the bridge in 1 month. Then something happens that annoys me a lot. Shay says to Tally in reference to Peris, "Hey, boyfriend?" And Tally replies, "Best friend." And then the interaction ends without any further conversation. This is just a really weird interaction because who does that? They don't even know each other at all. Like, imagine if this actually happened to you. Wouldn't you think that person's being weird? Wouldn't you be annoyed? Or at least have a little bit more conversation explaining why you asked, or I don't know. It's just weird. Tally goes back to her room and asks a computer in her wall for a toothbrush pill, and it materializes one for her. In both the movie and the books, they don't have to brush their teeth like we do. They have a pill for that. As she choose it, she looks out her window and has a flashback about the time she met Peris when she was 12 years old. That's the age you graduate from being a littly or a child into an ugly, and you get sent to the dorms. In this flashback, we also get to see Tally's parents dropping Tally off at the dorms, and her mom tells her she'll be prettier without those squinty eyes, hence why she chose to make Squint her ugly nickname. This little detail is not in the book. I thought that was an interesting bit of characterization. Tally also expresses a desire in the movie to have gold-colored eyes when she gets the surgery. Another thing she never says in the book that I thought was neat characterization, and the reason she wants those golden eyes is because that's her mom's eye color. Then there's a flashback about how Peris and Tally get their matching scars, which differs from the book's origin. You see, this is the one scene that is actually mentioned in the book, but the movie, even though it references it, it changes the meaning of it and how it happened. The movie scene occurs very fast in a way that's hard to understand, but basically Tally is looking at a morpho of herself in a tablet, and Peris gets angry. He doesn't like that Tally's not paying attention to him, I guess, and he says he already thinks she's pretty, so he shatters the tablet and it cuts his hand by accident. And then I guess she also cuts her hand on purpose to match him, and they make a blood oath. In the book, though, they use a penknife, and it's just a best friend pact they made as kids. It has no deeper meaning than that, and the significance of the scars is barely important as opposed to what it is in the movie. Now that Peris is gone, the movie cuts to Tally giving a school presentation. I don't know if this is the same day or later, but I'm going to read to you what she says, because we are now 9 minutes into the movie and we're about to get our third exposition dump. During the time of the Rusties, dependence on fossil fuel decimated the earth, poisoning our air, soil, and water supply, which resulted in division, conflict, and their ultimate collapse. But thankfully, our team of finest bioengineers created a genetically modified flower, the white tiger orchid. This miraculous plant decorates our countryside and powers our cities. And then the scene gets cut off to Tally getting body body scans, presumably to gather data on her body for her future surgery. The machine tells her she's done 196 body scans so far, which actually confuses me a little bit because in the book they do take your measurements and stuff for your surgery, but they do that shortly before your procedure. I'm not sure why she would do it so many times, like it's a routine, let alone 196 times. Is this a common pastime, or is there an actual purpose to this? It doesn't seem safe. I don't know. This scan scene is overlaid with Tally sending Peris messages on her interface ring, asking him how things are going, but he never responds. Note that in the book, it is said that Peris does respond one time before ghosting her. This is important later. And now finally, we are at the point where the book begins, where it's been about a month and Tally has been in limbo this whole time, wanting to turn pretty to be with Peris again. The following is part 1 of the book, Turning Pretty, and its movie correspondent. It's time for movie Tally to meet Peris at the bridge like she promised. She puts the little space heater in her bed again, tricks her bedroom into opening the window by doing a weird twisty thing with her ring that I guess confuses it, and jumps out, leaving her ring behind. The only problem is there was an earlier shot of the outside of her room in the movie, and it's very far off the ground, so she can't jump from that height and be okay. She sees a warden patrolling in the distance and runs before she can get caught. Book Tally has not promised to meet Peris at the bridge, but she is wondering why he's ghosting her. So she too decides to go meet him. Again, she puts a heater in her bed. She takes off her ring so that she can't be tracked. And instead of jumping out her 3-story window, she climbs down a tree. She also avoids a patrolling warden as she runs to the bridge. The movie now shows a pan over New Pretty Town all the way to the bridge where Tally has arrived. In the background, you can see the other bridges, but they are more high-tech than this old bridge Tally is on. This is canon to the book where Tally specifically chooses this bridge since it doesn't have the intelligence to tattle on her. Movie Tally is upset that Peris isn't there waiting for her like he promised. She decides she's going to go into New Pretty Town herself to find him. The movie scene here is very dark and hard to see. I had to watch it a few times to even make out what she's doing, but apparently she uses a buried rope to climb up the bridge so she can cross on foot. I would like to mention that during this whole escape and cross the bridge scene, the song playing in the background actually really catchy and often gets stuck in my head. Book Tally's plan has always been to go into New Pretty Town to find Peris. She doesn't show up there to wait for him because there's no promise to meet up with him. When she pulls up the old rope, it's explained that her and Peris used to sneak across to New Pretty Town together all the time. So it makes sense that they have this rope hiding here for this very purpose. As she climbs the rope, a boat full of new pretties sails by, and she has to stay still for a moment, hoping not to be noticed. However, the pretties don't notice anything because they're known to be so distracted anyway that they never notice anything. Movie Tally crosses into New Pretty Town and ends up in a garden. She passes by a blissfully unaware couple enjoying the garden, but nothing happens as she approaches an overpass where she sees a parade of pretties throwing masks. A pig mask just so happens to fall near her, so she puts it on, and it not only hides her face, but it gives her a whole new outfit, a pink dress, and it replaces her ugly school uniform. With her new disguise, she walks deeper into the city, admiring the view, as an airy cover of Such Great Heights plays in the background, and she seems to be super impressed and in awe of all the pretty things and party atmosphere around her. I know she has a different outfit and a mask on, but I do wonder why everyone accepted her as a pretty, because according to the pretty standards in the book, Tally doesn't match the height, weight, and bone structure requirement to fit in with this crowd. Plus her eyes are still visible through the mask, and they don't have the same enhancements that pretty eyes have. Also, her hair would still be frizzy. It's described as frizzy in the book. The movie never explains what the pretty standards are, so maybe they're looser in this specific universe. But that's the only explanation I can think of. Book Tally is having a much rougher time. She also ends up in a garden after crossing the bridge, which the book calls a pleasure garden. You can take a guess as to what that's for. And she runs into a couple that are unclothed, and they mock her as she runs by them, embarrassed. Seeing pretties up close and personal also gives her a shock. As the book says, even when she and Peris used to spy on them from the shadows, giggling at all the stupid things Pretty said and did, they couldn't resist staring. There was something magic in their large and perfect eyes, something that made you want to pay attention to whatever they said, to protect them from any danger, to make them happy. They were so pretty. It's important for you to know, by the way, that she wasn't thinking this while looking at the unclothed pretties, okay? She was looking at other fully clothed ones in this context. She manages to make it to the city streets, but she's worried about two things. Number one, being noticed as an ugly, which will get her in trouble. And number two, being run over by a vehicle the minute she crosses the street, because she's not wearing an interface ring and therefore might as well not exist to the technology around her. She's just about to wing it and run for it when she sees the parade of pretties with the masks. There's a machine printing the masks and throwing them around, so she grabs a pig mask that falls near her and puts it on. This does hide her face, but it doesn't change her outfit like it does in the movie. She also is not wearing an ugly uniform. She's wearing an all-black expedition outfit covered in mud, so she definitely stands out in the crowd. Movie Tally now stops a pretty to ask him where Garbo Mansion is. This is the mansion Peris lives in. In the beginning of the movie, when Peris and Tally are spying on the pretties with those goggles, it actually does show people partying at this Garbo Mansion. So even though we have a setup for the mansion existing and being mentioned, I don't know how Tally knows Peris lives there, though, because there are other buildings that he could be living in, and because he hasn't reached out to her at all since turning pretty. She really has no clues to go on. Although I do see at one point it happens very fast, but when you look at her messages to Peris, she does ask him how's Garbo, so she somehow knows, but again, I don't know how. Anyway, the guy tells Tally it's right there and points right in front of them where this giant lit up mansion is. Who would have thought? So Tally heads right on in. She continues to be in this awe-like state with everything around her, which is mostly holograms, confetti, and fireworks, when she sees Peris almost right away. Despite the fact that his hair color is different, she recognizes him by the back of his head and calls out to him. And when he turns around, guys, you will not believe this, he reveals the exact same face with the exact same nose. Only he's blonde now and wearing contacts. How hard would it have been to give him a prosthetic nose or something for the beginning part of the movie? Like, they didn't even try. It has come to my attention after reading YouTube comments on another video about this movie that apparently they did give him a prosthetic nose in the beginning. It looks like the same nose to me. It looks like the same nose. I don't know what they were going for. Tally immediately takes her mask off in the middle of the building in front of everyone because she's super smart and confronts Peris about his ghosting her. She also notices that he had the scar on his hand removed. Peris says that after the surgery, he just didn't want it anymore, which I don't know if that implies if he got another surgery after the first one to remove it. It has been like a month, but I'm not really sure how many times in a row you can get a procedure done. Anyway, Peris is pretty cold to Tally and even refuses to call her by her nickname Squint, which really rubs her the wrong way. He says the reason he didn't meet her by the bridge is because he didn't really know what they would talk about, which she'll understand when she's also pretty. A scanner notices Tally's face is ugly and declares there's an intruder, so she runs off and conveniently finds a case of bungee jackets. It has come to my attention that a lot of people don't know what bungee jackets are or how they work because the movie doesn't explain them, but fear not, I will give you an explanation. So Tally grabs one of these bungee jackets and she jumps off the roof of the building as the wardens almost comically slowly close in on her like, no, please, stop. She survives the fall because of the bungee jacket, and at the bottom, she rips it off and keeps on running into the crowd. The scene in the book plays out quite differently. So, Book Tally is definitely already spotted as an intruder, and the only thing giving her anonymity is this pig mask. She heads straight to Garbo Mansion because in this version, Peris did ping her one time on her interface ring before ghosting her, and every ping has a unique set of numbers at the bottom that can be decoded to tell you the sender's location. So since Tally knows how to decode these numbers, that's how she got Peris's address. As she heads in that direction, she wonders if she'll even recognize Peris. You see, the difference between pretties and uglies is supposed to be pretty drastic. If you know the person well enough, you might be able to recognize them after, but like the whole point is that there's a universal beauty standard in this world, so that doesn't leave much room for variation. A perfect example is what you see with Barbies. There's some variety, but at the end of the day, it has to fit a certain mold. A quote from the book supporting this says, "Pretties didn't really all look exactly the same. On their expeditions, she and Peris had sometimes spotted pretties who looked familiar, like uglies they'd known. Peris couldn't have changed that much. So it seems to be like how we can tell twins apart. If you know a pair of twins really well, they really don't look alike at all, even identical ones. But unless you know them as individuals, it's going to be very hard." Tally enters Garbo Mansion, but she's immediately on everyone's radar because it turns out the party in Garbo Mansion has a dress code of white tie, and she is in a muddy expedition outfit with a pig mask. The pretties start to chase her, start going, "Here, piggy piggy," partly as a joke, but also they're irritated that someone broke their dress code. So she hides in an elevator, but she can't make it close because, again, she does not have an interface ring, so now she's a sitting duck. A pretty stumbles into the elevator, and lucky for her, it's Peris. He recognizes Tally and commands the elevator to close, and he holds it there to keep Tally from getting caught. This is the first time we get to see Peris in the book, and he's a lot warmer to Tally than in the movie, even as a pretty. Though we don't get to ever see him as an ugly to begin with, we don't really have much to compare him to. But he is happy to see Tally and does call her Squint. And when the topic of the scar comes up, this is how it goes. "Take a look, Tally." He held out his own hand. The skin of his palm was smooth and unblemished. It was a hand that said, "I don't have to work very hard, and I'm too clever to have accidents." The scar that they had made together was gone. "They took it away." "Of course they did, Squint. All my skin's new." Tally blinked. She hadn't thought of that. So to me, this is a much more logical approach to the scar situation because of course they'd take the scar away, even without his consent. A scar is an imperfection. Imperfections are not allowed. And it also doesn't leave you with the weird question of, wait, did he get another procedure done after the pretty surgery? Did they ignore his wishes and just remove it anyway? Like, how much consent did he give here? And let's say he did explicitly tell them that he wants this scar. There is a later quote in the book where Shay says, "It's stupid. The doctors pretty much do what they want no matter what you tell them." So in the movie, they made it look like it was Paris's choice. But in the book, it wasn't necessarily him, and Tally can't be mad about it. And once again, we get to see Tally's response to seeing a pretty up close. Movie Tally doesn't seem to behave any differently around Peris before or after his surgery, but book Tally does feel a difference. The book says, "At school, they explained how it affected you. It didn't matter if you knew about evolution or not. It worked anyway, on everyone. There was a kind of beauty, a prettiness that everyone could see. Big eyes and full lips like a kid's, smooth, clear skin, symmetrical features, and 1,000 other little clues. Somewhere in the backs of their minds, people were always looking for these markers. No one could help but seeing them, no matter how they were brought up. A million years of evolution had made it a part of the human brain. The big eyes and lips said, 'I'm young and vulnerable. I can't hurt you, and you want to protect me.' And the rest said, 'I'm healthy. I won't make you sick.' And no matter how you felt about a pretty, there was a part of you that thought, if we had kids, they'd be healthy too. I want this pretty person." It was biology, they said at school. Like your heart beating, you couldn't help believing all these things. Not when you saw a face like this, a pretty face. So Tally has a pretty strong psychological reaction to seeing pretties. And by the way, her relationship to Peris in the book, completely platonic. They don't have romantic feelings for each other. I thought now would be a good time to bring that up. Now, when Tally confronts Peris about why he hasn't reached out to her more, he says he tried, but it felt wrong because he's so different now. He says to her that she's such a kid still, and makes her promise that she won't be doing any more pranks so that she won't get in trouble, and she'll get to be pretty, and they can keep being best friends. Then someone requests the elevator, so Peris has a choice. He decides to take the elevator up to the roof to help Tally escape, and tells her to use the emergency bungee jackets up there. As Tally leaves the elevator, she can no longer hide her identity because when she took off the pig mask to talk to Peris, she dropped it on the ground, and it immediately got recycled by the smart tech in the building. She's afraid of using the bungee jackets, but Peris assures her he does it all the time, and she's gonna love it. So she trusts him, she races for the bungee jackets, taking advantage of the fact that it's still dark out, so she isn't as noticeable, and she struggles to get one of the jackets loose because of not having a ring, so the only way for her to get one out is by pulling the emergency fire alarm. And after triggering the alarm, she puts on the jacket and briefly considers if it'll even respond to her without her ring, before taking a chance and jumping. When she falls, the jacket actually struggles to stabilize her because she's taller than the pretty standard, so it was not expecting the extra weight. The way the jacket works is that it doesn't let you take the impact of the fall, but all of that energy still has to go somewhere, so that's why in the movie you see her bouncing after it catches her. But in the book, the momentum causes her to somersault and bounce all the way down a hill into the pleasure gardens. Once there, she takes the jacket off and hides, just as the firefighters show up to Garbo Mansion to respond to the alarm. Now both stories lead into how Tally becomes friends with Shay. Remember, Shay was already seen once in an earlier scene in the movie, but in the book she hasn't appeared yet at all. After escaping, movie Tally appears at the bridge. She quietly tries to inch across it in the dark as a warden flies by looking for her. Her foot hits something that ends up splashing into the water, although I keep replaying the scene and literally can't see what it is, it's too dark, and it goes too fast paced. Honestly, on my first watch through, it was actually very distracting to me. And this splash attracts the attention of the warden in the hover car, which then turns around to flash its headlights at her. Before Tally can do anything though, Shay appears and puts her hand over Tally's mouth, telling her to get on her hoverboard or they'll both get caught. They fly away into the woods and lose the warden, falling off the hoverboard at the end. Time to rant for a second, they were going really fast on that hoverboard. So fast that I'm not sure they could survive a fall like that. But don't worry, because Shay has crash bracelets, which are supposed to catch you when you fall off a hoverboard. And they work similar to bungee jackets, except, oh, what? Her crash bracelets don't work? Because she just falls on the ground, just like Tally, who does not have crash bracelets. Let me show you how they work according to the book. Crash bracelets have to have metal inside because they worked on magnets the way the boards did. Whenever Tally's feet slipped, the bracelets got all hovery and caught her fall. Spinning out, which is what happens when you fall off your board, is also described as painful. The book says, it wasn't much worse than having your dad swing you around by the wrists when you were little, if your dad happened to be a superhuman freak and was trying to pull your arms out of their sockets. But the momentum had to go somewhere, and around in circles was better than into a tree. So yes, Shay should have fallen differently from Tally in this scene. Shay has crash bracelets. Tally does not have crash bracelets. One should have lived, one should have not lived. Now, this is the first time we see a hoverboard in the movie, and I gotta say, I thought they'd be rounder because the book describes them as oval shaped, but these look more like skateboards and then shrink into a smaller shape when not in use. The book hoverboards don't do that. After falling off the hoverboard, Tally and Shay have a conversation that I think is bizarre. I took the liberty of writing it down. I thought you were going to fall off at that U-turn. Yeah, so did I. And I don't have a bungee jacket on this time. Wait, what? I jumped off Garbo. That's why they were chasing me. Wait, in a bungee jacket? Yeah, from how high? Too high. You're way cooler than you look. Are you kidding me? You just lost a warden. Ordinary Tuesday. What were you doing by the river anyway? Just tricks. Do you want to go to the kitchen? It's locked. So, how are we not already friends? The reason this doesn't sound like good dialogue to me is that it feels like pieces of a conversation, but not like a full conversation, you know, with genuine reactions to things. So it's just like, it's the skeleton of a conversation. Part of it is just because she mentions not having a bungee jacket. I did say I was gonna get nitpicky, so here we go. They're talking about hoverboarding, right? You don't hoverboard with a bungee jacket, you hoverboard with crash bracelets. So mentioning the bungee jacket just seems weird. It almost feels like these characters don't exist in this world. So they go back to the dorms and they break into the kitchen to steal food. Shay, I guess, spray paints the surveillance camera in the kitchen so they aren't seen, and then they break into the kitchen, but I don't know how they do it because, like they said, it's locked. They proceed to steal a bunch of cupcakes and run away screaming. The scene then cuts to them, I think, being on the rooftop, the same rooftop where Tally and Peris had hung out before to spy on the pretties. Shay tells Tally that she's never actually gone into the city of New Pretty Town before, because the farthest she's ever gone was the Pleasure Gardens. So she asks her what it's like, and Tally says, it's everything they promised us. Then Tally implies that Peris seemed different when she saw him, and she assumes it's because it's gotta be hard to see an ugly face after a month of being surrounded by pretties. Shay says it hurts to be left behind. But Tally notes Shay wasn't left behind, she's pretty popular, she still has friends. But Shay says the important ones she cares about are gone. Ouch to her three amigos, I guess. They then find out they have the same birthday, which is September 9th. So they're really happy about that because they'll never have to be without each other. They'll be turning pretty together on the same day. Tally asks Shay what color she wants her eyes to be, and Shay nervously chews her nails. A nice detail that is canon in the book. Shay chews her nails when she's nervous. And Shay just answers, I don't know. And Tally says hers are going to be gold to match her hair. But Shay notes that Tally is not blonde, and Tally's like, not yet, I'm not. Anyway, this just serves to show, again, Tally's obsession with the pretty surgery. Everything she relates to, every topic of conversation, every bonding moment is somehow related to her obsession with her looks. Back to the book, Tally just jumped off Garbo Mansion in the bungee jacket and has rolled away into a pleasure garden. She's hiding in the darkness when she sees a warden come through, looking for her. This warden is described as a middle pretty. Middle pretties look different from new pretties. They're broad-shouldered with a firm jaw, sharp nose, and high cheekbones. She knows new pretties have their own wardens, so for a middle pretty to be here means it's serious. Because of the way the middle pretties are designed to look, Tally feels an overwhelming urge to trust this warden. Also, the wardens are known to be gentle, friendly, and merciful, which is different from the movie where they're more authoritarian. The movie doesn't physically show the wardens. They walk around with helmets on or are flying in hover cars, which kind of defeats the purpose of them being engineered to look trustworthy if no one is looking at them. And I think that takes a lot away from the story. As Tally slowly crosses to the river, she sees another warden in front of her, and she freezes. She ends up holding her position for a really long time, but that warden doesn't go away. So eventually Tally's muscles give out, and she ends up snapping a twig. But instead of getting busted, she finds out the other person wasn't a warden after all, but an ugly. And it's Shay. And Shay was also frozen in place waiting this whole time, thinking Tally was a warden. Shay asks Tally where her hoverboard is, but Tally doesn't know how to hoverboard, and she also doesn't know how Shay got one to take her to New Pretty Town, because the hoverboard itself isn't allowed to do that. Shay explains she has a workaround for it, and Tally says the way she snuck over was on an old bridge that doesn't have the smart tech to tell on her. They then have a similar conversation as in the movie about what Tally did in New Pretty Town. Tally explains how she crashed a party. Shay assumes Tally's there to see like a boyfriend or something. Tally explains her relationship to Peris. Shay mentions she's lonely, but unlike in the movie, Shay actually really doesn't have any friends left at all. That's why she gets so close to Tally so quickly, because Tally is literally her only friend now. One thing to note about Shay's nickname, Skinny. In the movie, they use it a lot. They also use it a lot in the book. However, one thing the movie leaves out is that Shay actually doesn't like the use of ugly nicknames. She sees them as put-downs and prefers using real names. I wasn't really sure where to put this bit of information, but I might as well put it here during Shay's introduction. Both stories now go on to flesh out the friendship between these two girls over the next month while they wait for their birthday. And a big chunk of that friendship is Shay teaching Tally to hoverboard, because that's Shay's favorite thing to do. In the movie, Shay gets Tally to skip class to go hoverboarding with her. One detail I noticed is that in the book, the board is supposed to be half as long as Tally is tall, and like I mentioned earlier, oval-shaped, but when Shay holds them up, they are barely ovals and not as large as described in the book. Tally's board is supposed to have silver cheetah spots. It was Shay's first ever hoverboard that she just never recycled, so she ended up giving it to Tally. But in the movie, Shay is the one riding the board with the silver spots, while Tally is riding a board with leopard print on it. It's a small detail that literally no one cares about, except for me. And also I'm bothered that they kind of look like boogie boards, like the ones you take to the beach. Anyway, when Tally gets on the board, Shay tells her, the more you ride the boards, the more they learn your style, implying they have some sort of AI. And she swears to Tally that the crash bracelets will work if she falls. Like I explained earlier, they are supposed to save you from getting injured in an accident. But as soon as Tally tries to take off, watch what happens the moment she does fall. So I guess the crash bracelets don't work. Not once in this entire movie do they show them ever activating, except for maybe like one time, but it's purely for plot convenience. They're literally never mentioned again, despite the tons of hoverboarding that occurs between both stories. The movie then shows scenes of Tally slowly learning to hoverboard with other scenes in between. It's kind of like a montage. Basically, it's showing the passage of time, but to us, the viewer, it feels really fast and choppy, if I'm being honest. On my first watch through of the movie, I remember thinking, dang, she really learned how to hoverboard fast, because the movie really doesn't give you a good sense of time. But one detail that I did like was that the obstacle courses in the park for hoverboarding are custom made, and you can load up whichever ones you want, and then the course morphs to form it. That was a neat bit of technology the movie made up, because I'm pretty sure the courses in the book are just physical obstacle course type things. Book Tally is also getting hoverboard lessons from Shay, and Shay explains that you have to wear a belly sensor for the board to learn your style, because it senses how you clench your abdominal muscles, and that way it can predict when you're turning or stopping. This is how the boards in the book learn your style. It also senses your center of gravity. Riding a hoverboard without a belly sensor is dangerous, just like going without crash bracelets. However, this is a danger that the movie doesn't have. Book Tally finds hoverboarding to be very difficult, and it takes a long time for her to learn. And it's during their time hoverboarding together, the girls in the book find out they have the same birthday. Okay, so remember when I said the hoverboarding scenes in the movie are cut with other scenes in between? I'm going to now talk about those scenes. This first one is not in the book. Tally and Shay are walking back to the dorms after some hoverboard practice, and one of the girls that was with Shay in the beginning of the movie during the graduation ceremony, she walks up to Shay and hands her a book. The book this girl hands her is Walden by Henry David Thoreau. She's giving it back to Shay because Shay was letting her borrow it, and the girl says, "It was incredible. Is that what the smoke is really like?" Tally looks shocked because books aren't a thing anymore, and this is basically considered like an ancient relic. So she's standing there looking around and over her shoulder as Shay goes, "You want to read it?" And I just think it's funny how they're acting like it's drugs or something. Tally says she wants to read the book and takes it and goes to stuff it in her backpack. But Shay goes, "Careful, he trusted me with that," but then refuses to elaborate on who he is. Shay's friend then recognizes Tally as the girl who jumped off Garbo, and the topic switches to how Shay told everyone about Tally's adventure. Tally gets pretty mad because she's worried her surgery will be denied if she ever gets caught for that, to which Shay replies, "They're not going to keep you from being pretty. They want you to be pretty." But before explaining what she means, she lightens it up with saying, "We all do with that face." I am bothered by how non-secretive Shay is being with this bright red illegal book she's handing out to kids, and how openly they talk about this place called the Smoke, because in the books it's a lot more secretive. Shay comes across as this overeager, shady individual individual that thinks she's really smooth and cool, but is actually a major liability and very dumb and smug. I don't like her smugness. Also, the book choice is strange because if you know anything about Walden, you know it's a book about a man's experiences trying to live out in nature and reconnecting with it. That is relevant to the later events in the movie, sure, but these kids are supposed to be 12 years old. And even for 15-year-olds like Tally and Shay, I don't think any of them would be reading this and calling it amazing. I've never read that book myself, to be fair, but I've seen discussions of it and excerpts on it, and it's very introspective and long-winded, and even the people that like it struggle to fully comprehend it. So I don't really know why this is the chosen propaganda piece to try to indoctrinate kids into a specific way of thinking. There are more effective methods, I am sure, although I am not the leading expert on brainwashing. Also, I really don't think a random kid should be allowed to run around openly with an ancient forbidden relic that she lets other kids she barely knows borrow. This next scene is also not in the book. Tally is in her dorm with Shay, and she shows her how she hacks the hole in the wall with her interface ring in order to trick it into giving her a cupcake. The way she does it is by asking the hole to give her a cup of water. But then when the hole tries to repeat the word cup, she twists her ring around and spams it basically until the computer gets confused and gives her a cupcake instead. It's pretty cringy, and that's definitely not in the book, although I will say there is an in-world explanation for why it would be so easy to hack it, but I'll address that later. But the movie doesn't explain that in-world explanation anyway. Shay seems super impressed by this for some reason, even though she's also supposed to be a good prankster herself, so this seems like something she should have been able to figure out on her own, but I digress. She excitedly eats the cupcake, and this image of her laughing with her mouth open haunts my nightmares. It fills me with a rage I cannot explain. The following scene is in the book. The girls are in Tally's dorm, and she has this big screen on her wall, which I assume is also her mirror in the beginning of the movie, and Tally has this software up that has all of her morphos on it, or different versions of herself that she's considering for her pretty surgery. It's basically like a sim customizer, and in the movie this software is called Anonym, which is nice because it doesn't get a name in the book. Anonym is a form of social media as well, where you can add people and see their morphos. A cool touch that was not in the original book, since the book was published before social media was what it is today. Tally is going through her morphos, and she's wondering which side of her face she wants mirrored to make her face symmetrical. She wants to go with her left side because she hates the right side. But Shay is disinterested in this and says symmetry's overrated anyway, to which Tally responds that it's a sign of health and that they're biologically programmed to prefer it. When she tries to add Shay on Anonym, Shay says she took down her account because it's a time suck and she wants to go out hoverboarding instead. So that concludes the 3 scenes that were interspersed with scenes of the girls learning to hoverboard together. Remember, these all happened in a montage. But now back in the book, we're actually at that last scene where they're in the room looking at the morphos. It goes similarly to the movie scene, but the conversation between them gets a little bit more heated. So first of all, Tally's movie morphos look really tame in comparison to the ones in the book. If you've ever played Inzoi, you'll know how crazy you can make the faces, and Tally has some versions of herself that are so extreme she doubts they're even legal. The book then explains that some other cities allow more extreme surgeries, but their particular city is more conservative with their standards. One of Tally's morphos looks like Cleopatra, which prompts Shay to say, you know Cleopatra wasn't even that pretty. She seduced people with her intelligence. And it's little comments like that that really irritate Tally. So like in the movie, Tally also hates the right side of her face and is messing around with different looks. The book makes it clear that Tally is obsessed with this program and has invested many hours in this. We saw that in the movie too with the amount of morphos she had. But all Shay wants to do is hoverboard all the time. Shay loves hoverboarding so much that she in fact is always wearing her belly sensor, even when she sleeps. So she's sitting there really bored and irritated with Tally. Their conversation then turns sour when Shay starts crap talking being pretty, and it goes like this. Right, and things were so great back when everyone was ugly. Or did you miss that day in school? Yeah, I know. Everyone judged everyone else based on their appearance. People who were taller got better jobs, and people even voted for some politicians just because they weren't quite as ugly as everybody else, blah blah blah. Yeah, and people killed one another over stuff like having different skin color. So what if people look more alike now? It's the only way to make people equal. I like this conversation because it actually shows us how indoctrinated Tally is, but it also brings up points that sound valid for why the pretty surgery is even a thing. It's true that what Tally said was not inaccurate. And what Shay said about politicians and stuff, that was true also. So even if Shay wants to live in a world where the pretty surgery isn't a thing, she can't deny the fact that those issues will crop up as a part of human nature. So the question is, what is the alternative, really? Now going back to the movie, here's another scene that does not take place in the book. It's one day before their birthday. They're about to turn 16, Tally and Shay are sitting on their hoverboards at the park, just hanging out. And Tally gives back Shay's book, saying she read it and that it sounds beautiful. Shay uses this as a segue to break it to Tally that she doesn't want to get the surgery. And Tally replies, what's the alternative? To get all moldy and crinkly? That goes against everything we've been taught, which is different from Book Tally's reasoning, because Book Tally's more concerned with like the overall implications, as we saw. Shay then tells Tally she wants to go live in the smoke, which Tally says is a myth. This is like the third time this place called the smoke is brought up in the movie, which is interesting because in the book, it's not talked about as often or as openly. In the movie, it seems as if everyone has heard of the smoke, but most people just think it's not real. The people in the book universe seem largely unaware that it's even a thing at all. Tally says to Shay that they are by far the trickiest people in the school, so if the smoke was real, they'd know about it. And by the way, in the Uglies universe, tricky means you do a lot of tricks or pranks. It implies you're smart, you get into trouble, you like to start stuff. I like that they included that word. Shay doesn't answer about the smoke being real, which makes Tally suspicious, and Shay abruptly says to meet her at the Greenbelt in a couple of hours to do one last trick. Back to the girls in the book, they also have a similar conversation, but it's in a different scene and it's a lot more intense. Unlike in the movie, they are still weeks away from their surgery. They're also out hoverboarding and end up getting into yet another pretty versus not pretty debate. The entire time, Shay is beginning to drift on her hoverboard into the danger zone outside of the city limits. Once she crosses that line, her board will tattletale on her, but Shay doesn't really seem to care. This is foreshadowing and symbolizing the fact that she is clearly defecting from this society and heading into trouble. As the argument intensifies, the hoverboard starts to give her warnings, tell her that she's getting closer and closer to the line. The literal line for the hoverboard, but also the symbolic line. At one point, Tally says that pretties probably don't do childish tricks like this because they have better things to do. And Shay replies with, or maybe when they do the operation, when they grind and stretch your bones to the right shape, peel off your face and rub all your skin away, and stick in plastic cheekbones so you look like everybody else, maybe after going through all that, you just aren't very interesting anymore. I like that dialogue because it gives a little peek into what the pretty surgery entails. And the description is so graphic that even Tally's upset by it. It really lets us know that the surgery is no joke. It's intense. In this scene and in general, Book Shay is a lot angrier than Movie Shay. Movie Shay gets uncomfortable and shifty around the topic of the surgery, but Book Shay actively argues with Tally and starts to become more and more unhinged with time. At the end of this conversation, Book Shay also tells Tally they're going to do something fun before turning pretty, and she wants to take her to the Rusty Ruins, which is a section of the city left over from the Rusty times that has been preserved as some kind of like time capsule for kids to come look at on field trips. Except they're not allowed to just go there alone, but Shay and Tally are used to breaking the rules, and Tally figures it's not a big deal since it is a place where kids go, so it can't be dangerous. So that night they meet secretly to head to the ruins. In the movie, Shay and Tally meet in a couple of hours as planned at the Greenbelt, which to be honest with you, I never actually knew what the Greenbelt was, but I'm assuming it's the forested area around them that is still within city limits. Tally sees Shay has camping gear with her, and she's worried that if they go out any further, they'll get detected by the towers. I don't know what the towers are. Shay says it's okay, though, and takes off her interface ring, putting it on a branch so that she now can't be followed, and she tells Tally to do the same. According to Shay, leaving the rings here will make them think they're having a picnic. Tally says, where are they even going to go? Their hoverboards aren't going to work outside of the city limits because they operate on a magnetic grid, and there's no grid past this point. But Shay explains that the river has mineral deposits that the hoverboards can function on, and tells her to stick to the water. Movie Tally doesn't know where they're going as she hoverboards down the river with Shay at high speeds. And this is a personal pet peeve of mine, but they do have Shay howling like a wolf, and I really hate it every time someone does that on screen. It's always cringe, and like, no one does that in real life, at least not anyone I know, and I would really like it to stop. Thanks. For the girls in the book, it's actually nighttime when they meet. As Tally is sneaking out of her dorm, she notes that the shadows seem to be purposely set up to hide people, almost as if they want you to sneak around. But she dismisses the thought, thinking, oh my gosh, Shay's paranoia is getting to her. They meet at the dam where the river splits in two to encircle New Pretty Town, which is interesting because the movie does show a dam later on, but there's a giant building there where the girls definitely would not want to secretly meet, but I'll get to that later. There's no giant building at the dam in the book. Shay then explains to Tally that she tricked their hoverboards so that they won't tell on them tonight when they leave the city. Tally's feeling nervous, and she tells Shay that she promised Peris she wouldn't get in trouble. And she also worries they won't let her be pretty if she causes too much chaos. But Shay says she's never heard of that happening before, and suggests that maybe Peris just wanted her to leave him alone. You know, he's not really that into you, kind of thing. Before Tally can really process that, Shay hands Tally some goggles because once they leave town, they're going to hit some rapids on the river, and things are going to get rough. Tally never realized before that the river was actually so violent. The part she's always seen is is calm and gentle. So she's terrified as they're hoverboarding down these rapids. She's also in awe of the trees around her because the city has these generic carbon dioxide suckers. I don't know what that means, but I guess that means they don't have a lot of natural greenery. And at one point they stop to look back at the city, now distant on the horizon, and Tally thinks about how this is way cooler than sneaking around New Pretty Town. Then the book adds an inconvenience that's actually missing from the movie. They have to head away from the river after a while, which means they can no longer hoverboard on it, which means they have to walk. Tally doesn't understand until Shay explains to her this is never a problem in the city because of the magnetic grid, but out here you have to rely on natural minerals and ores for the magnetic lift. That's why they work on the river, because of the minerals. But out on the land, there are only a few natural veins of iron that they will run into from time to time. So in the meantime, they have to carry their dead hoverboards. And Tally quickly realizes how heavy hoverboards are the minute they stop working. Shay makes a comment about how the city fools you about how things actually work. But Tally replies with, I kind of like being fooled about some things. So now the girls in both stories have arrived at the Rusty Ruins. But the stories do diverge, so let's cover the movie first. So first of all, I don't think the movie ever explains what the Rusty Ruins are, but as soon as they arrive, Tally says she's never been there before, which is already different from the book because, like I said, they all go there on school field trips at least once, just supervised obviously, but I guess that's not a thing in the movie. They pass a roller coaster and Tally asks Shay what that is. So Shay explains to her what a roller coaster is, and she says it's really fun to hoverboard on. But beyond that, they don't interact with the roller coaster anymore and keep going to this tall building. Shay takes Tally inside this tall building and heads to the top where part of the roof has collapsed. They have a really cool view of the city there. It's starting to get dark outside and Tally is having fun, but she's worried they aren't going to make it back in time for curfew. But that's when Shay abruptly turns to Tally and says, I need you to promise you're not going to tell anyone. Which obviously Tally is confused, and Shay keeps going, anything. How to get here, how to call him, just promise. And for the record, I'm really annoyed with how shady this version of Shay is, because if I were Tally in this situation, I'd be like, girl, what kind of cult are you in? Because I want no part of it. This is such a weird thing to spring on a person out of nowhere. But anyway, Tally promises she won't say anything without asking any follow-up questions to the things this girl just said. And then Shay uses flint and steel to light a fire in an already prepared fire pit. She also explains to Tally how flint and steel works to set fires because Tally doesn't know. When Shay sets the fire, Tally gets really nervous and says, Shay, who are you calling? And Shay responds that she's calling David. David, if you recall, was mentioned in the beginning of the movie when Shay was with her friends at the graduation ceremony. It's the same David that one guy doesn't think exists, but Shay called him a revolutionary or whatever. He was connected to the kids that had gone missing. Shay says he's real and the smoke is real and that David is going to show up now and she's leaving with him tonight. She says she's not getting the pretty surgery. The smoke is an alternative lifestyle where no one has to be pretty. There are kids there from all different places and she's met David here at the ruins many times, but on the day he came to take her and her friends to the smoke, she actually chickened out and didn't go with them. I'm assuming her friends were those missing children at the beginning of the movie, although they are never named. And then Shay changed her mind when she met Tally. You see, they started doing all these tricks together and it reignited her love of adventure and mischief, and she decided she was actually gonna really do it this time and actually go to the smoke. Do remember, Tally doesn't know what any of this means. All she did was read a book about camping in the woods and knows that this place called the Smoke is similar, but no one has actually explained to her what any of this means or who David is. So Shay is just lore dumping all of this on her right now with seconds to spare the night before their surgery. Tally thinks Shay is just afraid to grow up and that she's living in this fantasy. And then Shay dramatically says, I'm afraid to stop growing. And then she drops the ultimate plot twist. She wants Tally to come with her. She now brings out the camping supplies that she had earlier and shows Tally that she has enough food for both of them, that she stole from the kitchen, which if you remember, movie Tally taught movie Shay how to break into the kitchen. And she says the smoke is only 4 days away and that they grow their own food, it smells like the sea, there are no morphos or tablets, and everyone is free. So it's this really desperate, naive picture that she's painting of the smoke, and it reminds me of any time someone tries to convince me to do something that I know is going to be terrible. Do you know what I'm talking about? And Tally, much like I would, flat out says no, she is not going with Shay. All Tally wants is to be pretty. She didn't sign up for all this alternative lifestyle stuff. And she also says to Shay that she's tired of being less than and she wants people to see her. So this obviously makes Shay sad, but she knew there was a chance Tally would say no. So she wrote directions in a code only Tally would understand in case she ever changes her mind so that she'd be able to find the smoke later. At that point, they see another building in the distance light up and Shay says that's David and she leaves. She leaves Tally alone at night in a city that she has never been in before so that she can somehow stop stumble her way back to the river and ride the dangerous rapids in the spooky woods alone on the night before her surgery, where she may or may not make it back in time. I just want you to sit with that for a second. This is so different from the book. My rant on this is coming. But no, the movie does not explain how Tally even makes it back to the city. Now, this is how it goes in the book. First of all, I like this description of the rusty ruins. The rusty ruins were the remains of an old city, a hulking reminder of back when there'd been way too many people and everyone was incredibly stupid and ugly. Honestly, I can't say I disagree with Tally. While the surprise Shay had for Tally in the movie was the whole "I'm leaving with David" thing, book Shay's surprise is quite different. It's actually the roller coaster. So like I told you, the rusty ruins are a preserved part of the city used for educational purposes. But Shay takes Tally to the border and reveals that the ruins are actually much larger than they let on. The old city goes on for miles. It's hard for them to even comprehend because everything in their world is very compact and efficient, and a lot of the stuff like factories are now underground. But as we know, in our times, we take up a lot of space. So the ruins of something like New York would indeed be quite impressive. Actually, the canon is that these are the ruins of Seattle. And by the way, the name of their city is SeaTac, but that isn't said in the book or the movie. It just so happens to be something I know. It's in this part of the city that Shay finds the roller coaster, and she explains to Tally how it works, which surprises Tally because she didn't know the Rusties sometimes had fun. She tells Tally they're going to hoverboard on the track, but they have to go really fast or else it's dangerous, because further down there's a gap in the tracks, and if you don't have the momentum to jump it, you will plummet to your death, because during that brief moment of no metal, the hoverboard will stop working and so will your crash bracelets. Something I also noticed was that in the movie the roller coaster is wooden, but the one in the book is steel and has upside down loops. One of the reasons it's even still around is because of the highly durable metal steel roller coasters are made of. A wooden roller coaster would not stand the test of time. They're high maintenance as is even now. Also, it is said that this roller coaster goes higher than a hoverboard could ever go on its own. I don't have any reference for how high a hoverboard can go on its own. It's just a detail in the book. So I told you about the gap in the roller coaster that could get you killed. But Shay doesn't tell Tally. All she tells her is to go fast or else it's dangerous. So after Tally rides it and she gets to the other side, she's really mad at Shay for pulling that stunt on her because she really thought she was gonna die there for a second. And as we've kind of seen by now, Tally is not an adrenaline junkie, okay? She much prefers safety and rules and order. However, this is Tally's first real adrenaline rush, and she realizes she's never felt this before in her life, not even when she jumped off that mansion in a bungee jacket. So she starts to see everything in the city as bubble wrapped and dummy proofed. But out here was the real deal. This was real danger. To Shay, this is liberating, but to Tally, this is really scary, and she concludes that she actually likes the safety of the city. Tally asks Shay how she knows so much about roller coasters and mineral deposits, and she explains that there are other uglies older than them that have already figured it out and just passed the knowledge down. She speaks of one guy in particular that's really smart and knows a lot of things. Tally senses that Shay has strong feelings for this guy, and she sympathizes with her, saying, "But he's pretty now, I guess." And Shay says, "No." So when Tally gets confused by this, Shay says she wants her to meet someone tonight and that he's out here in the city, but she has to promise not to tell anyone. Now, Shay takes Tally to that big building with the collapsed ceiling to summon David. But instead of making a fire, she pulls out a safety sparkler and uses that instead. This matters to me because Tally lives in a world where the Rusties are condoned for setting fires and cutting down trees. So in the movie, when Shay lit that fire and started burning wood, Tally should have had an adverse reaction to it. It is literally offensive for them to light fires. Also, safety sparklers are easy for them to get a hold of in the city, and they're very visible from far away. I suppose you could also use smoke signals with a fire, but Tally specifically says the sparkler was bright enough to be seen by anyone in the valley, and maybe even someone out at sea. So it makes sense to use a safety sparkler as a signal for someone that does not live close. Shay then tells Tally she's summoning a guy called David, and this is the first time his name is ever mentioned in the book. Tally thinks that's a weird name. He must be someone from another city. If he isn't pretty yet, it must be because his city makes you wait until you're 18 to be pretty, since every city has its own rules. The fact that their city starts at the age of 16, they're actually on the young side of that. If I remember correctly, their city's pretty unique in that they start so early. Shay allows Tally to think these things. She doesn't elaborate, merely stating that he lives far away. And if he happens to be in the area, the sparkler will get his attention. But David must not be in the area because he never shows up. And Tally starts to wonder if he's even real. But she does notice that Shay is very disappointed. After this, they go back home. And on the way back, Tally looks back at the ruins and she swears she sees a tiny flicker of light, but she decides not to tell Shay. Now I have two things to rant about in particular, and I can't figure out where to put them, so I will put it right here. In the movie, movie, where Shay confesses to Tally she doesn't want to get the pretty surgery, Tally seems to have really low self-esteem, and she just wants someone to pay attention to her and to love her, which is why she wants to be pretty, even though Peris clearly did that in the movie already, so I'm not really sure why she's so desperate. But anyway, when Shay reveals this to Tally in the book, which will be later, Tally's objections are actually on a moral level. You see, she doesn't feel alone because she has Peris. Even if their relationship's not romantic, she still has Peris, and yeah, he's being weird, but she still looks forward to being with him again soon, and she also has Shay now, so she isn't currently lonely. Her problem is with people living out in the woods like Rusties, you know, the crazy Rusties that destroyed the world, something that she doesn't even seem to think about in the movie at all. My other issue is the note Shay gave to Tally. She also gives her a note in the book in a later scene. However, the first part of the riddle that she writes for Tally is a reference to the roller coaster. You'll understand what this means when I read the note later. This makes sense in the book because they have spent time together riding this roller coaster. But movie Shay wrote this note before ever taking Tally out to the roller coaster. Tally didn't know what that even was, and it certainly wasn't some kind of shared memory or inside joke between them because they didn't even write it. So why would Shay include that? And lastly, I lied, there's actually 3 things. Movie David lives 4 days away. Why was he there that day, and how did he know Shay was going to be leaving? I suppose she could have found a way to communicate secretly behind the scenes, but the movie made no effort to show us for sure, and in the book it was way more up to chance if he was there or not. And if he does live 4 days away, the chances of him not being there would be pretty high, I think. He would maybe come out to the city once a month or something, since he'd have to be gone from the smoke a full 8 days just for traveling, let alone hanging out in the city. It would make sense if they rotated people, like maybe there's always at least one person from the smoke hanging out in the city at all times. But that's definitely not the case in the book. All I'm saying is I don't think they really thought about the logistics of all of this for the movie. The logistics in the book are never mentioned, to be fair. I just think the movie's plot came together way too conveniently. As we see in the book, David did not show up the first time. Anyway, back to the book, we have some more scenes before it meets up with the movie again. So after Shay and Tally get back home, we get a montage of things they do together as they count down the days to their surgery. They end up going back and forth to the ruins a lot, and Shay is always looking for David, to the point where her obsession is really beginning to annoy Tally. They also play a prank together on the new batch of 12-year-olds just entering the dorm, and eventually they're down to 2 weeks before their birthday. The entire time Shay is talking about how the pretties are freaks and not them, and she keeps quoting David. Tired of this, Tally tells Shay the pretty way is the fair way because there are no losers. Everyone is ugly until they're not, and that's that. But Shay reminds Tally that yes, actually there are losers because the pretty surgery doesn't work on everyone, and those people tend to never be heard from again. The theory is they go into hiding, and Tally thinks, well, who wouldn't? Uglies might look goofy, but at least they were young. Old uglies were really unbelievable. But this conversation is meant to tip you off that not everything is as utopian as it seems. Some would even say it's dystopian. Then one day they're swimming in the river, and they have their worst argument yet. It starts off the same way as usual, but this time it ends in Tally angrily telling Shay she's afraid to grow up. And Shay responds with, I'm afraid to stop growing. Just kidding. She actually gets really quiet and swims away, and doesn't talk to Tally for a whole week. So that entire week, Tally is really depressed, and at this point all she wants to do is be with Peris again, and she figures that as soon as her and Shay are pretty, they can make up and all of this will be in the past because they will have matured. 1 week before their birthday, Shay finally breaks the silence. She comes into Tally's dorm with all of this camping gear and slowly breaks it to Tally that she will not be turning pretty. And it's all thanks to Tally's words of encouragement, because she's right. Shay was afraid to grow up, but she's not afraid anymore. She confesses to Tally that 4 months ago, her and her friends were supposed to leave with David, but some of them had chickened out last minute, including her. The ones that stayed behind all got turned pretty one by one, and Shay was resigned to the same fate until she met Tally and started enjoying life again. Now that she has a new person in her life to validate her, she's ready to try again, and she wants Tally to come with her. This is the very first time in the book that the smoke is ever mentioned, and Shay breaks the full truth to Tally about who David really is, and that the smoke is a place where you don't turn pretty, they don't separate anyone by age group, and you can choose to be who you want to be. Tally is really caught off guard by this, and she's very disturbed. She asks, but how do people live out there, Shay? Like the Rusties? Burning trees for heat and burying their junk everywhere? It's wrong to live in nature unless you want to live like an animal. Shay reassures Tally that they do have tech out there, and unlike the Rusties, they don't burn trees and stuff, but they do live out in nature. I'm not sure if this is a plot hole or if Shay straight up lied, but there is a line later in the book that says the smoke smelled like wood smoke. And the whole reason it's called the smoke is because of the smoke. So they're definitely burning fires, and the fires definitely do seem to be of the wood variety. But even with Shay's explanations, Tally still refuses to go, and she tells Shay that she'd better come back before she's 20, or else the operation won't look right after that point. But Shay says that none of her friends have ever come back, but Tally thinks, well, there might be a darker reason for that, but she doesn't want to say it out loud, so she's very worried for Shay. Having anticipated this response though, Shay gives Tally the handwritten note that we saw in the movie, but Tally is surprised because she wonders how Shay even learned how to write to begin with, since that is an extinct skill at this point. Shay explains that her and her friends actually learned how to write so they could write secret notes to each other and not get caught by their tech snooping on them. And after that, she leaves, and Tally has 1 week left to wait, but now she's by herself. Okay, now that I've shown you both scenes of Shay leaving between the movie and the book, I want to show you the exact dialogue in each one, because I think one is a million times better than the other personally, but I'll let you decide which one that is. So here's the movie. Shay, who are you calling? David. What? He's real, Tally. The smoke is real, and he'll be here any minute. Are you kidding me? If we get caught, our surgeries are canceled, and we'll be completely alone. I'm not getting the surgery. I thought you were messing around this morning. I wasn't. Okay, look, the smoke, it's an alternative, a different way of doing things. Nobody judges you for how you look. It's about who you are on the inside. There are a lot of kids there from all different places. That book you read, it's like that. It's simple and beautiful. And wait, you've been there? Well, no. I mean, I met with David a bunch of times here, but the night you jumped off Garbo, I was supposed to go with some of my friends. I chickened out, but then I met you and we did all those tricks and I liked the way that felt. I like reading books and making things, and they don't do any of that stuff in the city. You get the procedure, they tell you what to do, and that's it. Shay, I just think that you're afraid to grow up. I'm afraid to stop growing, and I want you to come with me. No. Tally, look, I have food for both of us from the kitchen like you showed me. That's not what that was for. It's 4 days away, and they grow their own food there, Tally, and I've heard it smells like the sea. Shay, and there are no morphos or tablets. I like tablets, and I like morphos, and everyone is exactly who they're born to be, Tally. They're free. I don't want to be free. I want to be pretty. I can't. Tally, please. I'm so sick of feeling like I'm less than. But you're not. I want people to see me. I see you. I wrote directions in a code only you'll understand, just in case. That's him. Please don't leave me. Please. I have to. Okay, and here's the dialogue in the book. Position finder, fire starter, water purifier. These pull out into sleeping bags, and they're really warm inside. Sleeping bags? Water purifier? This must be some kind of awesome multi-day trick. Are we going all the way to the sea or something? Farther. Cool, but we've only got 6 days till the operation. I know what day it is. Food for 2 weeks, dehydrated. You just drop one of these into the purifier and add water. Any kind of water. The purifier works so well you can even pee in it. 2 weeks? 2 weeks for 2 people. 4 weeks for 1. But it won't take 2 weeks, Tally. It's much closer. What won't take 2 weeks? Going to where David lives. It's not like here, Tally. They don't separate everyone. Uglies from pretties, new and middle and late, and you can leave whenever you want, go anywhere you want. Like where? Anywhere. Ruins, the forest, the sea, and you never have to get the operation. You what? We don't have to look like everyone else, Tally, and act like everyone else. We've got a choice. We can grow up any way we want. Not be pretty. That's crazy, Shay. All the times you talked that way, I thought you were just being stupid. Peris always said the same stuff. I was just being stupid. But when you said I was afraid of growing up, you really made me think. I made you think? Made me realize how full of crap I was. Tally, I've got to tell you another secret. Okay, I guess it can't get any worse. My older friends, the ones I used to hang out with before I met you, not all of them wound up pretty. What do you mean? Some of them ran away, like I am. Like I want us to. You know someone who actually ran away? I was supposed to go too. We had it all planned. About a week before the first of us turned 16, we had already stolen survival gear and told David that we were coming. It was all set up. That was 4 months ago. But you didn't. Some of us did, but I chickened out. And I wasn't the only one. A couple of the others stayed and turned pretty instead. I probably would have too, except I met you. Me? All of a sudden I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't afraid to go back to the ruins to look for David again. But we never... You finally found him, didn't you? Not until 2 days ago. I've been out every night since our fight. After you said I was afraid to grow up, I realized you were right. I chickened out once, but I didn't have to do it again. I want you to come, Tally. No, wait. How come you never told me any of this before? I wanted to, except you would have thought I was crazy. You are crazy. Maybe, but not that way. That's why I wanted you to meet David, so you'd know that it's real. It doesn't seem real. I mean, what is this place you're talking about? It's just called the Smoke. It's not a city, and nobody's in charge, and nobody's pretty. Sounds like a nightmare. And how do you get there? Walk? Are you kidding? Hoverboards, like always. There are long distance boards that recharge on solar, and the routes all worked out to follow rivers and stuff. David does it all the time, as far as the ruins. He'll take us to the Smoke. But how do people live out there, Shay? Like the Rusties? Burning trees for heat and burying their junk everywhere? It's wrong to live in nature, unless you want to live like an animal. That's just school talk, Tally. They've still got technology, and they're not like the Rusties, burning trees and stuff. stuff, but they don't put a wall up between themselves and nature. And everyone's ugly, which means no one's ugly, which means no one's pretty, you mean. I'm gonna lose you, aren't I? You're the one who's running away. It's all my fault. I should have told you earlier. If you'd had more time to get used to the idea, maybe. Shay, I never would have gotten used to the idea. I don't want to be ugly all my life. I want those perfect eyes and lips, and for everyone to look at me and gasp, and for everyone who sees me to think, who's that? And want to get to know me and listen to what I say. I'd rather have something to say. Like what? I shot a wolf today and ate it? People don't eat wolves, Tally. Rabbits, I think, and deer. Ugh, gross. Thanks for the image, Shay. Yeah, I think I'll stick to vegetables and fish. But it's not about camping out, Tally. It's about becoming what I want to become, not what some surgical committee thinks I should. You're still yourself on the inside, Shay, but when you're pretty, people pay more attention. Not everyone thinks that way. Are you sure about that? That you can beat evolution by being smart or interesting? Because if you're wrong, if you don't come back by the time you're 20, the operation won't work as well. You'll look wrong forever. I'm not coming back forever, and I'm not going. After this, they actually say their final goodbye somewhere else, and that's when Shay gives Tally the note and all that. But the movie version has 300 words, and the book version has 900 words. So the movie literally cut out 2/3 of the conversation. Now, I get that they have to condense some things, but this is such an important scene that I think more time could have been dedicated to it. As it is, the goodbye scene in the movie only got 3 minutes total. 1 more minute could have added a lot more nuance. Also, take a shot every time the book says Tally or Shay's name. My goodness, that's like my biggest pet peeve with the writing. So this is important. For movie Tally, it is now the day of her surgery, and Shay just left the night before. For book Tally, it is also now the day of her surgery, but Shay left a whole week ago. This timeline matters. On the day of movie Tally's surgery, she wakes up to her wall screen telling her congratulations. She goes to the assembly run by Dr. Cable, where she gives the same exact speech as the first time, which begs the question, how often are we doing these assemblies? Because Peris's was 2 months ago, and here we are again. And there are birthdays every day. If we're doing kids in batches, it would make more sense to at least, do it quarterly or something. So even if your birthday was a month ago, you'd still have to wait for that specific time of year to do every new 16-year-old at once. But if they're not doing it that way, then they're definitely doing this thing every single day, because their dialogue makes it clear. It happens on your actual birthday. Not a very efficient use of time. And as governor of the city or whatever, I'm not really sure how Dr. Cable has the time. So anyway, Tally gets taken in a hover car to the hospital where they do the surgeries. As she sits there in the waiting room, she notices the nurse calling other kids' names, but not hers. Also, I think they made up names for this movie, which is always fun. Imani Badu is one of my favorites that stands out. Now the last one left, she is approached by a man that is in an all-black outfit, clearly not a nurse, and she asks him if something is wrong. The scene then cuts to Tally being in another hover car with the man driving. The navigation system for this car, by the way, is weird. He seems to be hovering his hand over the controls, but if I actually had to drive that way, I think that would be exhausting. It shows clearly that they are heading to a building called Special Circumstances, but this isn't a map or anything, so I don't understand the interface. Does it matter? Probably not. I just appreciate when the little details are thought of in movies, and I think the only purpose for this is to tell us we're going to special circumstances. But it's a blink and you'll miss it tell anyway. I didn't even notice it the first time I watched. Tally nervously asks him from the back of the car if this is about the bungee jacket thing, but the man doesn't respond to her. They arrive at a large modern-looking concrete building built over a dam. I did say that dam would come back around. And this is the Special Circumstances department. A different, bald man wordlessly leads her into a room where Dr. Cable is waiting. Book Tally does not go to an assembly because that's not a thing in the books. She waits at the dorms for a car to come get her. As she waits, she's thinking about her surgery, and we get this vivid description. Her body was going to be opened up, the bones ground down to the right shape, some of them stretched or padded, her nose cartilage and cheekbones stripped out and replaced with programmable plastic, skin sanded off and reseeded like a soccer field in spring. Her eyes would be laser cut for a lifetime of perfect vision, reflective implants inserted under the iris to add sparkling gold flecks to their indifferent brown. Her muscles all trimmed up with a night of electricize and all her baby fat sucked out for good. Teeth replaced with ceramics as strong as a suborbital aircraft wing and as white as the dorm's good china. They said it didn't hurt except the new skin, which felt like a killer sunburn for a couple of weeks. This graphic image is in her head when the hover car finally arrives and she's taken to the hospital. Unlike in the movie, she is in the waiting room alone. There are no other children there, and she's there for over an hour before someone finally approaches her. He looked strange, unlike any pretty Tally had ever seen. He was definitely of middle age, but whoever had done his operation had botched it. He was beautiful without a doubt, but it was a terrible beauty. Instead of wise and confident, the man looked cold, commanding, intimidating, like some regal animal of prey. When he walked up, up. Tally started to ask what was going on, but a glance from him silenced her. She had never met an adult who affected her this way. This man is from Special Circumstances, and he tells Tally there's a problem with her operation. She gets into a hover car with him, and he drives so aggressively and erratically that it makes Tally get carsick for the first time in her life. They now head to the part of town where all of the underground factories are located and arrive at a building that is painted the color of dried grass. Once inside, Tally sees more people with this cruel beauty like this man. They're all wearing black and gray clothing, and they're taller than the pretty standard, their eyes as dull as Uglies. And all of them look very predatory and intimidating. The man leads her to a metal door, opens it, and points. Realizing that he hasn't spoken to her at all since getting her at the hospital, Tally says, "Say please." And this makes him reply, "Inside." And this makes Tally smile because she got him to speak again. She goes into the room where the door shuts behind her, and inside is Dr. Cable. What are you guys fighting over back there? Movie Tally already knows who this woman is. She sees her every day at the school assemblies after all. And she is the district governor, so a public figure. Probably one of the biggest letdowns here is that Dr. Cable isn't at all what she's supposed to be in the book. She's supposed to be frightening, and her surgery isn't supposed to just be your standard middle pretty look. She's actually supposed to be really scary, like the other guy that I described. Movie Cable is, however, a standard pretty, and she wears a white dress. She tells Tally to please have a seat because Shay is missing. She apologizes for delaying Tally's surgery, but they need her help to find her. Tally tries to act surprised, but Dr. Cable immediately says, "Well, you did realize she wasn't in the waiting room, right?" So she ends up having to lie on the spot, saying she figured Shay was just sick or something. But behind Tally, you can see a projection of her vital signs, and clearly the room is set up to have some kind of built-in polygraph test. And Cable knows she's lying. But Tally keeps insisting she has no idea where Shay is. And Cable gently pushes back and says they think a man named David might have led her astray, and the sooner she helps them, the sooner they can get to her surgery. And then she points out that they have facilities right there. You can see 3 surgery pods in the room with them. Why do they have operation tanks in this interrogation room? There's a hospital dedicated to the pretty surgery, and they are in an entirely different place. Why would they have 3 surgery pods all together like that? Are they performing them all at once? Why would you be standing up for your surgery? Why is there a giant glass window in the operating area? I'm sure they appreciate the natural light, but that's an unusual thing to put in an operating room. And why is this room so weirdly barren for a place where a very serious, very complicated surgery takes place? Yes, this is the future and this is advanced tech, but the set design here is just non-existent. I know it sounds nitpicky, but this will tie into the ending of the movie, and I am firmly convinced they threw these in here just for plot convenience. But they actually make no logical sense. Anyway, Tally doesn't say anything, so Dr. Cable sends her back to the dorms, which is unheard of because Tally is supposed to be in New Pretty Town now, so she's shocked that she's going back. But Dr. Cable says she'll stay there until she can remember something that can help, giving her a barely veiled threat. In the book, Tally is meeting Dr. Cable for the first time. You see, Special Circumstances is a bit of a myth. A lot of Uglies don't even think it's real. Dr. Cable is the head of Special Circumstances, and she is not a public figure, instead operating from the shadows. When Tally sees her, she's terrified, and this is the book's description of Dr. Cable. The woman was a cruel pretty. Her nose was aquiline, her teeth sharp, her eyes a non-reflective gray. Her voice had the same slow, neutral cadence as a bedtime book, but it hardly made Tally sleepy. An edge was hidden in the voice, like a piece of metal slowly marking glass. She also smiles at one point, and it says only her top teeth show, so imagine like a snarl with sharp teeth. Her eyes also angle upwards like a wolf's. In one of the later books, it is stated that the tallest pretty is allowed to be 6.5 feet tall, or 2 meters. Dr. Cable is described as being taller than this. However, that does confuse me a little bit, because Tally naturally is taller than the pretty standard according to the book. So if the maximum height for a pretty is 6.5 feet, Tally must be a very tall girl herself. I also don't even remember where I got this information from, so my numbers could be off, but surprisingly, Laverne Cox, who plays Dr. Cable in the movie, is only 5'9", so movie Cable is not exceptionally tall. But anyway, it is clear that book Cable is an advanced type of human. She's had another surgery beyond the pretty surgery to make her what the books call a special, and the goal is to make her intimidating and predatory looking, while also enhancing her reflexes and strength. And unlike in the movie, book Cable wears a gray and black uniform, just like all the other specials. She is not a fashionista. The conversation between these two starts off really tense, with Dr. Cable refusing to even give Tally her first name, which throws Tally off actually because she's never called an adult by their last name before. Tally starts to confess about the bungee jacket incident at Garbo, but Cable cuts her off and says this isn't about some ugly trick, and she makes it clear she's talking about Shay, and she knows that Tally knows. Book Tally is more resistant to Dr. Cable than in in the movie, and she attempts to get the power back by asking Cable some questions of her own, some of which Cable answers. She's also worried about Shay's note, which she actually has in her pocket in this moment, and she hopes they don't search her and find it. And she notices that Dr. Cable's eyes keep darting down to some unseen screen, so she knows they're monitoring her vital signs. Again, like a polygraph. In the end, Dr. Cable isn't able to get much information out of Tally, so she sends her back to the dorms and makes it clear she will not be getting her pretty surgery until she decides to cooperate in a very upfront threat, something that is devastating to Tally. And just like I did with the goodbye scene between Shay and Tally, I will now read you the dialogue from the scene between the movie and the book, because once more, I have very strong feelings about which one of these scenes is better. Hello, Tally. I'm Dr. Cable. Please come in. You know who I am? I'm so sorry to delay your surgery. I know how excruciating that can be, but we need your help. Shay's missing. Please have a seat. That's terrible. You did realize she wasn't in the waiting room. I thought she must have been sick, you know? Or something like that. Is that what you thought? Shay's in danger. I don't know where she is. We believe she's been brainwashed by a man named David. He gets people to trust him and then holds them against their will. Help us. The sooner you do, the sooner we can get to your procedure. We have facilities right here. Do you remember anything she said that would help us find her? I wish I could help. Well, maybe a night back at the dorms will help you remember. Something may jog your memory. You're going to send me back to the dorms? Only until you can help. Just try to remember. And now for the book. You didn't know Shay long, did you? No, just this summer. We were in different dorms. And you didn't know any of her friends? No, they were all older than her. They had already turned. Like your friend Peris. Yeah, like Peris and me. But Shay's friends didn't wind up pretty, did they? Why wouldn't they? Did she tell you about her friends? We didn't talk about stuff like that. We just hung out because it hurt being alone. We were just into playing tricks. Did you know she'd been in a gang? A gang? How do you mean? Tally, did you and Shay ever go to the Rusty Ruins? Everyone does. But did you ever sneak out to the ruins? Yeah, a lot of people do. Did you ever meet anyone there? What special circumstances? Tally, if you tell me what special circumstances is, I'll answer you. This city is a paradise, Tally. It feeds you, educates you, keeps you safe. It makes you pretty. And our city can stand a great deal of freedom, Tally. It gives youngsters room to play tricks, to develop their creativity and independence. But occasionally, bad things come from outside the city. We exist in equilibrium with our environment, Tally, purifying the water that we put back in the river, recycling the biomass, and using only power drawn from our own solar footprint. But sometimes we can't purify what we take in from the outside. Sometimes there are threats from the environment that must be faced. Sometimes there are special circumstances. So you guys are like minders, but for the whole city. Other cities sometimes pose a challenge. And sometimes those few people who live outside the cities can pose trouble. It's your turn to answer my question, Tally. Did you ever meet anyone in the ruins? Someone not from this city? Not from any city? Nope, I never did. Don't play games with me, Tally. Your friend Shay will never thank you for it because you'll never see her again. 6 of her friends disappeared, Tally, all at once. Not one of them has ever been found. Another 2 who were meant to join them chose not to throw their lives away, however, and we discovered a little bit about what happened to the others. They didn't run away on their own. They were tempted by someone from outside, someone who wanted to steal our cleverest little uglies. We realized that this was a special circumstance. We've been watching Shay since then, hoping she might lead us to her friends. So why didn't you stop her? Because of you, Tally. Me? We thought she had made a friend, a reason to stay here in the city. We thought she'd be okay. But then Shay disappeared. She turned out to be trickier than her friends. You taught her well. I did? I don't know any more tricks than most uglies. You underestimate yourself. It's not my fault. Help us, Tally. Help you what? Find her. Find them all. What if they don't want to be found? What if they do? What if they were lied to? I can't help you. I made a promise. Then I'll make you a promise too, Tally Youngblood. Until you do help us to the very best of your ability, you will never be pretty. You can die ugly for all I care. So the conversation in the movie is only 172 words, while the dialogue in the book is 566 words. That's 30% of the conversation that they kept. I personally think, just like with the other scene I read, they should have dedicated more time to this one. It would have added another minute or two, sure, but it would have also really shown us the push and pull between these two characters that I really enjoyed in the book. Anyway, when movie Tally gets sent back to the dorms, she's forced to walk through the crowded hallways and be laughed at by the other kids still being there, which I think is an interesting choice because, like, pretty surgeries don't get canceled. That doesn't happen. So I don't think these kids should be laughing. I think they would be more horrified than anything else. Tally ends up back in her old room, which still has her morpho on the wall screen, and she's sitting there staring at it when she hears a knock on her window. Book Tally gets a little bit more dignity because they made sure no uglies would be around when she returned, taking them on some unplanned trip for the day. When Tally returns to her room though, she sees it's been reset to factory settings, and it seems as if someone had even already briefly moved in there before being moved out again. She can also hear some kids giggling outside after seeing her through the window. Again, I disagree that this should be their reaction. I think they should be scared that this could happen to them too, and and they'd want to know why. Tally thinks about the note from Shay still in her pocket, and she thinks she's found a weakness in special circumstances because clearly they can miss things. Someone leaves some food in front of the door for her since she missed dinner, and she eats it while sobbing. Her parents arrive at the dorm an hour later. Movie Tally opens her window and Peris comes in. Why he came in through the window, I don't know, because he could have used the door. He doesn't have to sneak around because he's an adult now and he can do what he wants. Also, her room is 3 stories up and he doesn't have a hoverboard or anything. Evidently, he has noticed that something went wrong, and he gets the story from her about how they want her to tell on her friend Shay or they won't turn her pretty. Peris tells her to just tell them everything because, you know, even though she made a promise to Shay, she also made a promise to him. But Tally calls him out for not talking to her in 3 months and being weird to her when she went to see him. But again, he insists she'll feel different when she's pretty and she'll understand. And besides, Shay could be in actual danger. And this seems to be enough to convince Tally to help Dr. Cable. Meanwhile, Book Tally is actually with her parents, Ellie and Sol, in her dorm. At first, she's relieved to see her parents because she's confident they can sort all of this out. And her father's indignant attitude gives her some hope that he'll do something. But when they tell her to cooperate with special circumstances to help her friend Shay, who could be in danger, she tries to tell them that it's not that simple and that she made a promise to Shay. And then they proceed to essentially call her childish and even scold her for letting Shay run off in the first place. When Tally tries to tell them about how creepy the specials look and how afraid she is, she finds out all of the adults are actually aware of special circumstances, but none of them have ever actually seen one face to face. So Tally's basically like, oh, lucky me, I'm the one that gets to see a special. Also, the longer she speaks to her parents, the more she realizes they don't really know as much as they let on, and they definitely don't understand the gravity of the situation. And when she tells them she has to think about what her decision will be, her parents actually seem shocked that she isn't just cooperating without resistance. When she asks them if she can come home with them while she thinks, they're even more shocked, and things get really awkward, and they tell her she's better off where there are other kids, and they kind of dismiss her feelings on the matter. Also, this scene shows us that Tally calls her parents by their first names and not mom and dad. This is apparently a common thing in the city. I also wonder where Shay's parents are and why they haven't tried contacting Tally about their missing daughter. Shay's parents are literally never mentioned. After her parents leave, 4 days pass, and she's spending this entire time just hiding during the daytime and hoverboarding at night. She doesn't really know what she's gonna do, and one day she gets back from hoverboarding just as the sun is coming up, and she finds Peris in her room waiting for her. I don't know how he let himself in, but he did come officially in a car, so someone did bring him over from New Pretty Town. And this is another scene, this conversation between Peris and Tally, that I want to read the dialogue directly from the movie and the book to, once again, compare them. So here's the conversation in the movie. You just had to do it different, huh, Squint? You have no idea how much I needed to see you. They're after me about my friend Shay, and apparently I can't get the surgery until I tell them where she is. So just tell them everything you know. Well, yeah, but I made a promise to her. But you also made a promise to me. What am I supposed to do? Squint, we spent every day for 4 years dreaming of what it would be like in the city. You're supposed to be with me. You haven't even pinged me in 3 months. And you were so weird last time. It's just different there. You'll feel different there. Yeah, you said that already. Come on, Squint. What are you gonna do? Refuse to help? Not get the surgery? You would be a freak. A total outcast. And besides, it sounds like she's in actual danger. You're not breaking a promise if she needs help. And now, this is the scene in the book. What happened to your face, Squint? Haven't you heard? They didn't do the... Not that. You look like you've been juggling cats all night. Oh, yeah. Just a little midnight hoverboarding. A little past midnight, don't you think? How long have you been here? Long enough. Sorry, I didn't know you were coming. Of course I came. The moment I figured out where you were, I came. It's good to see you. You too. Look at you, Tally Youngblood. Please don't. You're an absolute mess. So do you always go hoverboarding in a blender? Just tree branches at high speed. Oh, so getting yourself killed is your next brilliant trick. I guess that would just about top your current one. My current what? This whole trick where you haven't turned pretty yet. Very mysterious. Yeah, some trick. When did you get modest, Squint? All my friends are fascinated. I mean, I already told everyone about you after that fire alarm thing, but they're really dying to meet you now. There's even a rumor that special circumstances is involved. Well, that's true. They're the reason I'm still ugly. Really? That's so bubbly. Did everyone know about them but me? Well, I had no idea what anyone was talking about. Apparently specials are like gremlins. You blame them when anything weird happens. Some people think they're totally bogus, and no one I know has actually seen a special. Just my luck, I guess. So they're real? Do they really look different? You know, not pretty. It's not that they're not pretty, Peris, but they're just not as pretty as you. You'll have to tell me all about it, but don't you dare tell anyone else. Not yet. Everyone's gonna be so intrigued. We could throw a big party when you get yourself prettied up. Peris, I know you're probably not supposed to talk about it, but once you're across the river, just drop a few hints about special you-know-what, and you'll get invited to all the parties. Just make sure to take me with you. There's even a rumor that all of the bubbly jobs go to people who had tricky records as kids, but that's years from now. The main thing is to get you pretty already. But Peris, I don't think You'll love it, Tally. Being being pretty's the best thing ever, and I'll enjoy it about 1,000,000 times more once you're there with me. I can't. Can't what? You see, they want me to tattle on a friend of mine, someone I got to know really well, after you left. Tattle? Don't tell me this is all about some ugly trick. Sort of. So tattle away. How big a deal can it be? It's important, Peris. It's more than a trick. I made a friend a promise that I'd keep a secret for her. Tally, you made me a promise too. You promised you wouldn't do anything stupid, Tally. That you'd be with me soon. That we'd be pretty together. Best friends forever, Tally. Best friends forever? Forever. You'll keep that promise, Tally? Of course. Really? Yeah, I'll be there as soon as I can. I promise. I should go, before the thingies all wake up. Of course. It's almost past my bedtime, and you've got a big day ahead of you. Okay, Peris. I'll see you soon. As soon as possible. Maybe in just a couple of days. I'm so excited. The movie scene is 165 words, and the book scene is 579 words. So this is about 28% of the original conversation that they kept in the movie, again sticking to that 1/3 rule we've seen in the other scenes. What I like about the book scene is that the conversation includes a little bit of subtle world building that actually comes into play in later novels. I also like how in the book, Peris actually starts brushing Tally's hair while she cries, and he comforts her. Even though their relationship in the book is not romantic, it does show how much he still cares about her, even after turning pretty. Since in the movie, they did make their relationship romantic, it would have actually made sense to include all of that physical contact that occurred in the book, especially since the two actors actually have good chemistry on screen with each other. So I just think that's interesting that as platonic friends in the book, they have more contact than as romantic interests in the movie. And just like in the movie, book Tally latches onto this excuse of how she made Peris a promise first to justify telling on Shay. After Peris leaves, she actually pings Dr. Cable to tell her she'll cooperate and says, "I'll do what you want, just let me sleep for a while." Because remember, she stayed up all night. And then a few moments later, she gets a reply saying, "A car will be sent for you, arriving in 20 minutes, which I thought was hilarious. Again, I really like the back and forth between Tally and Dr. Cable in the books. In the movie, the scene cuts straight to Tally meeting with Dr. Cable again, after her conversation with Peris. The timeline here seems to be that she only spent one night deliberating on what to do, and after talking with Peris, she went right back. This is different from the book, where she has been thinking for 4 days past her birthday. As stated previously, this timeline does matter. When Tally goes back to Cable, she tells Tally that David is developing a weapon to destroy the city, and he's brainwashed Shay. If she ever tries to leave, he will hurt her. And that's why Tally needs to find the smoke and infiltrate them to find this weapon and bring Shay home. If she doesn't want to do that, she apparently still has the option to become pretty and go on as if nothing has happened, but Tally chooses to help because she doesn't want the city to be destroyed, and she doesn't want Shay to be harmed. So using the instructions Shay has written for her, she sets out on a journey to find the smoke. It's unclear how Dr. Cable knows Tally got these instructions from Shay to begin with, and it's also unclear why she needs to be the one to find the smoke. Book Tally takes another nauseating hovercar ride to special circumstances. Exhausted and sick, she faces Dr. Cable once again. This time she tells Cable some more information. She says that Shay was planning to leave with this guy called David. Cable recognizes the name, and she asks Tally if she knows where they were going. Tally doesn't, but she does pull out Shay's note, only to find that Dr. Cable already knew about the note and had secretly made a copy of it the first time Tally was there. So Tally gets angry and goes, "Well, what do you need me for if you already have the instructions?" But Cable explains that number one, the note is based off things only Tally and Shay would understand between each other. And number two, the end of the note clearly implies there's a rendezvous point, which means that if she shows up with a car full of specials, they're just not going to show up and they'll never find the smoke that way. Plus, this isn't the first time the specials have heard of David or the smoke, and this isn't the first note they've found with cryptic instructions. They've tried to follow it themselves before, but whenever they show up, there's never anything there. So she gives Tally a bunch of survival gear, and she tells her she's gonna have to go herself and make up a story about how she changed her mind and didn't want to get the operation, so she ran away the night before her birthday, which means she already has to make up for 4 lost days, or else they'll get suspicious. She also gives Tally a pendant with a tracker inside and tells her to activate it when she gets inside the smoke so they can come and get her and bring everyone home. Tally's horrified because she's never spent the night outside the city, and she also doesn't want to go alone. She just thought she was going to go answer some questions and be done, but Cable tells her that if she doesn't cooperate fully and to the best of her ability, she won't ever become pretty, and they'll just find someone else. And as one final manipulation, Cable shows Tally a blown up image of herself on a screen, zooming in on all her imperfections and saying, "That's you, forever." So, exhausted and manipulated, Tally agrees to go. There is no mention of a weapon, like in the movie, and there isn't a major focus on David either. All Tally has to do is get to the smoke and activate the pendant. And there's the added pressure that she has to make up up for several days of lost time to not seem suspicious. Also, Tally does get a heart-shaped pendant with a tracker in it from Cable in the movie as well, but it happens in a montage that is cutting back and forth between past and present while Tally's on her journey, so that's why I didn't share that when I was explaining the movie scene, because it just doesn't show it to us chronologically. And that concludes part 1 of the book. We are now shifting into part 2 of the book, called The Smoke, and its movie correspondent. The story now shifts into a more action-heavy plot as things begin to escalate. Part 1 covers about 1/3 of the book, and in the movie, we're now at the 36-minute mark. Since the movie is an hour and 42 minutes long, part 1 is more like 20% or 1/5 of the movie, but I'm bad at math, so someone double-check that, please. Both stories now cut to Tally heading out on her journey to the smoke, and before we start the scene-by-scene comparison here, I have to point out a major difference. The instructions Shay left for Tally are a little bit different between the book and the movie. So the instructions in the book are as follows. Take the coaster straight past the gap until you find one that's long and flat. Cold is the sea and watch for breaks. At the second, make the worst mistake. 4 days later, take the side you despise and look in the flowers for firebug eyes. Once they're found, enjoy the flight. Then wait on the bald head until it's light. The instructions in the movie are, take the coaster straight past the gap until you find one that's long and flat. Find the wall and weigh the face. Don't look down and do not haste. Cold is the sea and watch for breaks. At the second, make the worst mistake. Your journey ends in a sea of white. The smoke will find you in the night. So there are definitely going to be some pretty big differences going forward. So movie Tally heads to the roller coaster in the daylight in the rusty ruins with her cheetah print hoverboard from before, and she knows Shay's first clue is about riding the roller coaster. But since she didn't actually ride it like she did in the book, she wouldn't have any idea of what the gap means. And if you remember what happened in the book, you'd know that riding the coaster without proper knowledge can be deadly. So movie Shay is kind of a terrible friend. Tally climbs the coaster supports to get to the top, and once she's up there, she rides it all the way down until there's a gap in the tracks, and her hoverboard stops working. It goes flying off into the trees, and Tally goes falling with it, almost dying, but is caught last minute by her crash bracelets, because she landed on top of a train track which is made of metal. And thankfully her crash bracelets are working now. The one and only time in the entire movie it shows them doing anything. So she survives and recognizes that this must be the long flat coaster that Shay was talking about. Also, the crash bracelets in this scenario work more like a force field holding her entire body up, but in the book they catch you differently and spin you around in circles from your wrists to expend the momentum. Tally now rides down the track to her next destination, but it's unclear how she knows which direction to go in. Book Tally leaves the city at midnight to avoid running into anyone so they don't know what's happening. This is all very hush-hush. Instead of her regular hoverboard, the specials gave her a long-range hoverboard, like the kind Shay stole before leaving. This one is solar-powered and has lights on the end that act as a metal detector, so she knows when it's about to stop working. This is good because this hoverboard also goes a lot faster since the limits have been removed, which means that if it stops working suddenly, the fall can be fatal. This extra speed is good because it can make up for lost time too. She also heads to the roller coaster in the ruins, and since she already knows how to ride it, she goes all the way to the gap in the track. At this point, the track turns and continues going, but Tally keeps going straight ahead, just like the note says. Her hoverboard begins to fall for a few seconds before catching itself again. Because she is still in the rusty ruins and there is metal everywhere, so there is no near-death experience like in the movie, she now starts to look for something that looks like a long flat coaster, but is about to give up when she sees the train tracks in the woods. She doesn't know what a train track is, by the way, but figures this has to be the clue. It seems pretty obvious. And since the next line is cold as the sea, she knows to take the train tracks going in the direction of the sea. The movie continues with a song that I actually kind of vibe with, as Tally lights a fire and heats up some dehydrated food labeled Spagable from her camping gear. This is an Easter egg that relates to the book. Later, she stops at a river to cool her blistered feet in the water. She is then seen following Shay's clue about finding the wall and weighing the face. It seems to be like a literal 90-degree cliff face that she has to climb with no proper gear, and she ends up dropping some of her things in the process. I don't know how she found the wall, or what weighing the face means, or why they changed this from the book. One thing I do miss is that the book shows you her thought process for figuring out all of these clues, but the movie gives it all to us in a quick montage, so we kind of miss out on all that. So in the clues that are different from the book, I literally have no idea what they mean or what she was thinking. The montage continues with her trying to stay warm at night as the leaves begin to fall, which is accurate to the book because remember, it is currently September. And then she ends up at the sea, where she has to figure out the clue, cold as the sea and watch for breaks, at the second make the worst mistake. We see her still following the train track, but now she's on the edge of a broken bridge where the track is supposed to cross the sea. She jumps off the bridge and her hoverboard stops working, and for a moment she's free falling and it's not looking good. But the hoverboard thankfully comes to life again at the bottom of the water just as she's about to hit it, and she's fine and makes it to the other side and continues on down the train track. Again, no explanation given as to why that happened or how she figured out this clue. Book Tally has a lot more time to take in her surroundings than movie Tally. The book actually spends 3 chapters in total describing her journey. She ends up passing many abandoned towns and even an old train station, which helps her figure out what the train track even is and what its purpose was. As she continues down the track, she gets to the sea and remembers doing camping trips here with her parents when she was little. She gets really nostalgic for her childhood, and as she's thinking about it, she almost doesn't notice the broken bridge in front of her, and she ends up not stopping in time. The difference between the sea and the river is that the sea doesn't have mineral deposits at the bottom, so Tally won't be able to save herself with her hoverboard. She starts falling to certain death when she notices the board occasionally catching in the wind like a sail. So she cleverly uses her jacket to make an even bigger sail and ends up being able to glide safely back to the bridge by taking advantage of that sea breeze and managing to lift herself up enough for the board to be able to interact with the metal of the tracks again. I think they didn't do this in the movie because it would be hard to show visually what Tally's thought process is here, but also her hoverboard is longer shaped versus more disc shaped in the book, so I don't think the sail thing would have worked very well anyway. Tally realizes that Shay's clue meant she had to watch for breaks in the track when she was originally thinking of waves breaking in the water. I'm not sure how Tally was meant to cross this first break because although Shay tells her there will be one, she doesn't offer a solution, so Tally ends up getting stuck there for the day, unable to find a way around. Also, Tally has been traveling at night instead of the day because she wants to let her solar-powered hoverboard charge while she sleeps. As the sun begins to set, she gets hungry and she takes a drink of water from a water purifier in her camping gear. She pulls out one of the dehydrated packets of food labeled Spagable. I told you the Spagable would come back around. And as she eats, she sees her first completely unfiltered sunset out in the wild, and she thinks to herself, this is way more beautiful than the fireworks in New Pretty Town. She doesn't quite go to sleep yet since she wants to find a way around the broken bridge in the daylight instead of the dark, so she ends up hiking for about an hour around the chasm until she meets back with the train track on the other side, and she continues following it until she gets to the second break Shay warned about an hour later. This second broken bridge is over a river gorge and is also too wide to jump across. So now she's just tired and confused, and she decides to finally sleep here, and she'll figure it out when she wakes up. In order to charge this fancy hoverboard, she has to unfold it 4 times. So by the end, it looks like 8 hoverboards all side by side and no thicker than a stiff sheet of paper. The reason for this is to give it as much surface area as possible for it to charge quickly, and the only reason I mention this is because it is relevant later in the story. Unable to sleep, she decides to eat some more, and when she looks through all of her food, she realizes the only flavor Dr. Cable packed for her was Spagable. 41 packets of Spagable, to be precise. When she is finally able to sleep, she keeps having nightmares of falling into the ocean, because now she has PTSD from the time she almost died. But when she wakes up, she comes to a realization that when Shay mentions making the worst mistake is falling. So at this second break, she knows she has to jump off the bridge, or at least she assumes that's what she must do. So just like in the movie, she jumps off and begins to free fall, but she does panic and tries to do the sail thing again to get herself back up, but this time there's no wind here and it doesn't work, and she's just about to hit the bottom when her crash bracelets activate and the board catches her, because this is a river and it has mineral deposits for the board to work on. She does end up getting yanked pretty hard though by the arms from the crash bracelets, and it hurts a lot. But interestingly, movie Tally's crash bracelets don't activate at all in this scene. Now that she's on the river, she has to follow it for 4 days and then choose the side she despises. We will get back to movie Tally in a bit, but right now she doesn't have to do any of this, so we'll be on the book for a while. At this point, Tally is super sick of Spagable. She's running out of toilet paper, she really stinks, and she wants to take a bath. So after traveling on the river for 3 days, she decides it is time. Now do remember that it is fall and it is cold outside. And also this river is being fed by snow-capped mountains, so it's gonna be extra cold. When she jumps into the water, she is freezing her butt off, but it does make her feel alive. I guess kind of like how people do a cold plunge. I mean, I think they're crazy, but supposedly it's an amazing experience. She uses the soap she has to wash herself as quickly as possible and begins to head back to her camp. But before she can get out of the water, she sees a helicopter approaching. Since Tally does not know what a helicopter is, she is rightfully terrified. Plus, she's completely naked, so she hides under the water until it leaves, which is thankfully pretty fast. The helicopter did nothing, but her sleeping bag did end up getting shredded to pieces by mistake. Now without a sleeping bag, she keeps traveling and finds a fork in the river. Even though she's only been traveling for 3 days and Shay's note said she has to make a decision on the 4th day, she knows that this fork in the river surely must be part of the clue where she picks a side. Because her hoverboard is way faster than most, so she probably just got here faster. Since Shay's note says to take the side she despises, Tally thinks back to her conversations with Shay, where she was always telling her how much she hates the right side of her face. So Tally decides to take the right side of the river because that must be what Shay was referring to. By sunrise, she arrives at a massive field of white flowers, so she knows she made the right decision. But now she has to find firebug eyes in the flowers, and she has no idea what to look for. She spends the whole morning looking for anything that looks like the clue, but as noon arrives, she has found nothing, so she decides to hide because she's still worried about the helicopter finding her from earlier, and she takes a nap in the flowers. Now we can go back to the movie because this Tally is also in a field of white flowers. The only thing is, there's no connective tissue between her previous clue and this one, so I don't know how she was meant to find the flowers. But nonetheless, she's here. Her clue is that her journey ends in a sea of white and the smoke will find her in the night. She chews on a completely dry piece of spag bowl as she lays in the flowers waiting for the sun to set. This field of flowers, by the way, looks really weird. I can't really explain it, but it's like the flowers are too evenly spaced out. It reminds me of when you try to paint with a pattern brush in Photoshop, but you don't fix the settings to vary it enough so it looks uncanny instead of natural, because that's totally a relatable thing to compare it to. And now the movie makes a major deviation from the book. As Tally waits in the flowers, we cut to a scene of Peris talking with Dr. Cable. You see, the book is only from Tally's perspective, but now we're getting a little bit of Dr. Cable's as well. Dr. Cable says thanks to Peris for convincing Tally to go find Shay, and it's implied that this was planned from the beginning for him to convince Tally. I don't know if they were working together secretly, but it's still possible he did it on his own, and now Dr. Cable is just thanking him, but I don't really know. Peris asks where Tally is because he wants to see her, and Cable tells him she's helping with one more thing. So it seems Peris doesn't know the full situation. She asks him, how did he feel seeing Tally again? And he says it feels good and a little weird because he started feeling things that he hadn't felt since before the surgery, and he misses that. Let me remind you that it's only been 2 months because it feels like they're giving this scene the emotional weight of someone who's been thinking about things for decades as opposed to a very small window of time. I just think it's a big character change when we barely even know who the original Peris even is, let alone pretty Peris. Dr. Cable tells him he's not the only one that feels this way, and that there's always a few people that need more than just the pretty life, and that she's been working on a new path for these individuals. This new path offers clarity of thought. What Dr. Cable is referring to is making Peris a special, or in this case, a special kind of special that is even more special. Again, remember that it's only been 2 months since he had his last major surgery, so the timing here is terrible. He agrees without any hesitation or follow-up questions, but it seems to me like he doesn't really fully know what he's agreeing to, which is essentially becoming superhuman. But all of this is done essentially just because he said he still is capable of feeling feelings after his pretty surgery, which Cable evidently sees as an unusual and valuable trait. In the books, it takes a lot more than this to become a special, and Peris is never one of them. He has done nothing to earn this privilege, either in the book or the movie. Also, this is important for later. Notice how there are 2 doctors and 2 nurses standing here as Peris is getting his surgery, and we later see them hitting some buttons to edit Peris's body. So in this movie universe, the surgeons stand at screens and control whatever is happening in the surgery pod. And this is the same area that Dr. Cable had shown Tally earlier, where these 3 random pods are in this interrogation room, okay? This will come back around. Somebody remind me. Just remember that we have established a rule for this world. So the movie cuts back to Tally sleeping in the flowers, and she wakes up and there's a fire. She gets up coughing, and there's really nothing she can do because she's completely surrounded by it. But before anything can happen, someone runs over and grabs her, saving her from the fire. Not sure how, because she is 100% surrounded, so this person must be fireproof. And the funny part is, he sets her down, still in the fire, like they're right there. This guy is wearing goggles, but really no other form of PPE, and honestly, he should not be running through fires. That clothes looks very flammable. And when Tally asks this very intelligent fireproof man who he is, it turns out to be David. He starts scanning her stuff for trackers and says she's lucky they found her. The scanner does find a tracker on her hoverboard, but David isn't worried because he says all hoverboards have trackers on them, and that's actually how he found her to begin with. He throws the tracker in the fire, and Tally panics when the scanner goes over her heart pendant, but nothing happens. The scanner doesn't pick it up. Now the scene cuts to Dr. Cable in a giant room with a map. Tally's tracker, the one that was on the hoverboard, goes off, and it alerts them, and a special comes in to tell Dr. Cable that the tracker seems to have been removed. And I swear they edited his voice to be lower pitched here. It was very distracting, but maybe I've watched this movie so many times now for the script that I'm just hearing things. this. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go to the movie and at the 44-minute, 11-second mark, give it a listen and tell me what you think. So Dr. Cable's like, ooh, she made contact, send 2 specials. Which to me is like, why though? Aren't you waiting for Tally to find the weapon so that she can activate her pendant and call you guys over? What even is the point of this entire plan if you're just gonna blow her cover like immediately? Back in the book, Tally is again waking up in the middle of a fire. She decides to jump on her hoverboard and desperately tries to escape, and notices that same darn helicopter from before is there, and it's intentionally spreading the fire. Her hoverboard gets knocked over from the wind of the helicopter and she falls into the river, where she begins to sink with all the heavy gear on her. But she manages to grab onto the edge of the hoverboard and pull herself up. By now, the helicopter people have seen her and immediately start to extinguish the fire as they run toward her. One of them manages to grab the edge of her board, but because Tally is scared and she doesn't want to get caught by them, she stomps on his hand. But this does cause her to lose balance and fall, and they end up catching her anyway. When she looks up at their masks, she sees what looks like firebug eyes. Could this be Shay's clue? They pull her into the helicopter and give her first aid because she is scorched by the fire and also swallowed a ton of water from the river. When they take their masks off, they're pretties, but they're also very focused and responsive, which is surprising for pretties. They explain to her that they're rangers and they purposely burn the flowers, which are white tiger orchids or Phragmipedium panthera. These flowers are left over from the rusty times, and they used to be super rare, but scientists had genetically modified them to propagate easier, and then they became invasive. Now they're just destroying the environment, which is why they need to be contained. And so the edges of the flower field continuously get burned away. The reason they use old tech like a helicopter from the rusty times is because helicopters can fly anywhere without a magnetic grid, and they actually help to spread the fires. I googled this type of flower, by the way, and while orchids are real and Phragmipediums are real, the Phragmipedium panthera doesn't seem to be. I was just curious. These rangers speak with a different accent, and they come from a city that Tally has never heard of. The pilot of the helicopter, his name is Jenks, and another one is named Tonk, but it doesn't really matter because they never come up again. Anyway, they know Tally is headed to the smoke. They actually help the smoke, and they often transport runaways from Tally City in their helicopter while making the rounds to burn the flowers. Despite the fact that these pretties are living in cities and don't want the smoky life, they do respect and rely on the smoke's knowledge of the environment, and they have a symbiotic relationship with them. So they drop her off at the rendezvous point, which is actually in the middle of the flowers, not on the edges where the fires get set, and tell her that no one knows where the actual smoke camp is since the Smokies don't trust anyone, not even the rangers. So this is as far as they're allowed to go, but someone will come for her soon. As they say their goodbyes, they tell her that if she ever wants to leave, she can always volunteer to be a ranger with them. Tally is awed by the fact that there's a city that even lets you choose what job you want, because hers doesn't do that. And now that Tally's been dropped off in the correct spot, the final instruction is to wait on the bald head, which is the dead middle of the flower infestation. It's bald because the land is barren there, since the flowers had killed everything off, including themselves. This is where she now sits and waits for the smoke to find her. Movie Tally, who is already with David, leaves the fiery flower field with him to go meet with the others in the woods. They approach an abandoned-looking building, and I'm not really sure how much time has passed because it's daytime now, but I know according to Shay's clue, the smoke was supposed to meet her in the flowers at night, so have they been traveling all night? I don't really know. Tally asks him if this is the smoke, already reaching for her pendant to be a traitor, but David tells her the smoke is still a day away, and they don't take newcomers there immediately because they have to vet them first. When she meets the others, she sees that Shay is with them and runs to give her a hug. Tally complains about Shay's dangerous directions, and Shay says, honestly, I give you like a 7% chance of getting it, which is real nice, Shay. You're a good friend. Another one of the Smokies is introduced, and his name is Croy. As Tally and Shay walk off together talking, Croy remarks to David that no one has ever made it alone before, and they both find that suspicious. But David thinks she's pretty useful if she can make a journey like that alone, so he's okay with it. Night falls, and they're all in tents getting ready for bed, and Tally is catching up with Shay when Shay asks Tally about the heart pendant, thinking it must have been from someone special. Tally lies and says it's from Peris, but Shay is confused about this because she thought her and Peris were just friends. Tally changes the subject and tells Shay that she looks really happy, but this place doesn't seem right and she's worried for her. This makes Shay angry, and she realizes that Tally is only here to bring her back home. But instead of telling on her, she tells her she'll keep the secret as long as she takes the time to get to know the people here, because she'll change her mind once she does. The next morning, Tally finds out the Smokies are the ones setting fire to the flowers. Instead of the rangers from the book, it's the Smokies that fly around in a helicopter, and they're the ones eradicating these flowers. The biggest difference is that the flowers in the movie, which have been mentioned before in the exposition dumps from the beginning, were made by the city and are used as a renewable resource for power somehow. But the Smokies claim they were intentionally intentionally designed to destroy nature in order to force everyone to live in the cities. This raises a couple of questions. Number one, the Smokies pick up recruits in the flowers at night. Why would they send new recruits to a dangerous area where they are setting fires? And why would they set these fires at night where the chance of someone being there is higher? At least in the book, the Rangers are the ones setting the fires, and even then, only on the edge and not on the bald part that recruits are supposed to wait in. Shay's clue in the movie never mentions heading to a bald spot, and the Smokies never specify they're only burning the edges, so we can safely assume the entire place is at risk, and Shay's instructions were very likely to get Tally killed. Number 2, David says he found Tally because of a tracker on her hoverboard. So why did he set fire to the flowers with her in there? Why didn't he scan for signs of life before setting the fire? Especially since he knows this is where recruits go, and there's no way for him to know ahead of time if someone is going to be there. Number 3, the Smokies don't want to be caught by the governments. Setting massive fires in the forest to a field of flowers that is government property and their sole power source will definitely get the attention of the governments. And since they only live a day or two away from these orchids, it wouldn't be hard for them to be tracked down. Where do they get helicopters from? The Rangers in the book get their helicopters from their city, but the Smokies don't have that luxury. Also, it would be super easy to follow a helicopter all the way back to their camp. If these flowers belong to the government, why haven't they set up measures to protect their property? Anyway, Tally goes with them on this mission, despite Croy's complaint that they don't even know her. As they fly over the mountains, David shows Tally the line where nature ends and the flowers begin, explaining how they pull all the nutrients from the soil and leave the land barren. He sends Croy ahead to clear the field, which I assume means checking for people or animals, which again begs the question of why they didn't find Tally earlier. Also, one of the girls on this helicopter, the co-pilot, her name is Ride. She's only mentioned once in the movie, and I'm pretty sure she gets like 2 lines in total, but I wanted to say that she's also in the book. Her, Croy, and a guy named Asterix are actually Shay's old friends that she was supposed to run away with, but the movie never explains that. Shay starts setting fire to the field, but Croy suddenly sees movement and alerts David. This is going to be nitpicky now, but this thing right here that Croy is holding seems like it's supposed to be an infrared scanner. When you look at Croy's screen, the moving blimps are in red, and so is the helicopter. The rest of the forest is blue and green. Where is the fire? Regardless, this is not tracker finding tech, so I still wonder what they used to pick up on trackers from far away, because that's supposedly how they found Tally, which means they didn't find her on the infrared. David asks Croy, are they ours or theirs? But later in the movie, he says the specials have never come out this far before, so I don't know why he'd be expecting anyone else. If anything, I think he would think they were runaways. David lowers the helicopter to, I guess, see who these people are, and as he does so, Shay's restraint breaks and she falls out of the helicopter from a height that should be lethal, especially since she's also falling into a fire. They all see that the new people in the fire are now running toward Shay. David calls them scouts from the city, and they're wearing the blue glowy uniforms of the wardens from earlier in the movie. And you and I, as the viewers, know from the zoomy sounds that they're running very fast, and are the new super enhanced specials that Dr. Cable was so excited about. Tally decides to climb down a rope into the fire herself to save Shay. Now, I already talked about how dumb it would be for the specials to be here already. They would be blowing Tally's cover immediately before she can even do anything. But the other issue here is that Tally doesn't want to be in the smoke. She wants to go home with Shay and be pretty. If she is on the side of the specials, why is she stopping them from collecting Shay and taking her home? I know she's scared that Shay fell into a fire, but the specials wouldn't let Shay die. They would rescue her. They're not good guys, but they do have many reasons for taking Shay alive. You might think, well, Tally now doesn't trust the city because of the whole evil flower thing. But for all Tally knows, the smoke is lying to her. It's way too soon for her to be switching allegiances like that. But overall, I really don't know why there are specials here. I don't know what their goal is. Tally makes it to the bottom and stands there screaming Shay's name while the specials do zoomies toward them. I'm not joking, there are actual zoom sound effects and they're hilarious. Shay is there on the ground next to her, alive and well, despite falling from a lethal height into a fire. So Tally grabs her, but not before tossing a flaming backpack at one of the specials closest to them. She tugs at the rope and they get pulled up, and during this whole incident, Croy is yelling at David that they need to gain altitude again. But David keeps flying low on purpose to not leave the girls behind. So in the end, everyone ends up being okay and they fly away from the fire. When they return to the abandoned building, Croy is immediately suspicious that they were found by the specials. He does not trust Tally at all because it happened as soon as she shows up. And then there's also the fact that she came here all by herself when no one has done that before. Despite his very sound logic, no one listens to him. David trusts Tally because she endangered her life to save Shay. saying nobody dives out of a helicopter into fiery hell unless they believe in something bigger than themselves. That's the cornerstone of the smoke. Now, I take issue with this because number one, Shay is clearly Tally's best friend. This has nothing to do with allegiances. This does not prove Tally is on the side of the smoke, just that she wants Shay alive. Number two, what exactly is the cornerstone of the smoke? Because that sentence doesn't really make sense. I know you probably think I'm being nitpicky again, but it does aggravate me because it feels like empty inspirational talk that actually doesn't make any sense when you try to analyze it. So David thinks there are no red flags with Tally and says she's safe to take to the smoke now after less than 24 hours of vetting, but Croy is very much unconvinced. Also, I'm disappointed that Shay herself isn't more suspicious because she already knows Tally just wants to take Shay home and didn't come here with honest intentions to begin with. The movie now shows us a flashback of Tally asking Cable why would Shay ever believe her. Cable replies that people believe what they want to believe. Use that to your advantage. Which, you know, that's not an untrue statement. It just doesn't seem like a very airtight plan on Dr. Cable's part, particularly because she has seen Tally lie and knows she's a terrible liar. Book Cable puts more thought into things and is actually concerned that they won't believe Tally, particularly because of the timeline involved. She offers a lot more assistance, including giving Tally a cover story. But movie Cable's like, let's just wing it. They'll believe you because they're dumb. And it kind of feels like the writers being defensive here, trying to get ahead of the obvious plot holes. This next scene in the movie is really unnecessary and it makes me uncomfortable. It definitely does not happen in the book and it's very icky. So they haven't arrived at the smoke yet. They are camped for the night and Tally wakes up and leaves her tent because she can't sleep. She's feeling restless. When she walks out, she sees David bathing in the river and then stands there and watches him bathe without his knowledge for a full 26 seconds like a creep and then goes back to her tent. There is seriously no reason for this and it never comes back around and I hate it. And if the genders were reversed, it would also be way worse. I really don't like it. Also, it's cold outside and it's fall. Why is David bathing at night in the coldest part of the day? The next day, they arrive at the smoke and apparently they had Tally blindfolded. They take her blindfold off and she can see the smoke. Well, actually, what she's seeing is a bunch of waterfalls. I don't know why they said they arrived when they clearly have not arrived. And now we can circle back around to the book. Book Tally is sitting on the bald head in the flower field waiting for the smoke to arrive after being deposited by the rangers. They arrive at dawn and are dressed in all white with wide brim hats that camouflage with the flowers. Shay is among them because she had seen the helicopter drop someone off and was hoping it would be Tally. The Smokies in this version live close enough to the flowers that they can see whenever helicopters come by from their camp, so they know when there are recruits to pick up. The girls are happy to see each other again, but when Shay brings up that Tally had delayed a considerable amount, Tally uses the excuse that the instructions were hard to follow, and she got turned around. Unlike in the movie, Book Shay feels really bad about this and says, "Oh, I thought you'd understand it," which actually makes Tally feel bad, but it does work to give her a good reason to be late, and because at this point, she has scratches all over her face, sunburn, and fire burns, it's clear she's been through some stuff, and that helps give credibility to her story. David introduces himself and scans her for trackers. Like in the movie, they do find one on her hoverboard, which again is the standard. He says this is the reason they meet newcomers out here instead of at camp, because there are always trackers. Once again, her pendant doesn't set off any alarms though, and Tally reasons that it's probably because she hasn't activated it yet. Instead of throwing her tracker in a fire like the movie, David instead attaches the tracker to a migratory bird and says he hopes the specials enjoy South America. Now Tally gets a good look at David. She's really thrown off by the fact that someone over the age of 16 could still be ugly. His smile is crooked, his forehead's too high, but overall he's actually not so bad. When she sees Croy, however, she apparently thinks he's legitimately ugly, which I think is hilarious because in the movie, Croy is better looking than David. He might be one of the better looking people in the whole movie, in my opinion. This Croy is not suspicious of Tally. He's just a little suspicious, but really he's mostly interested in stealing all of her spag bowl. Tally sees them as worthless and she hates spag bowl at this point, so she's willing to let him have all of it. But Shay stops her and explains that in the smoke, things have a lot more value, and Croy's trying to rip her off. She instead advises Tally to save the spag bowl for trading later, a concept that horrifies Tally, who does not understand what an economy is. Tally also notices that Shay and David are very affectionate with each other. In fact, as excited as Shay is to see Tally, she seems to be paying the most attention to David. They all head together into the woods to hike to the smoke, and on their way there, Tally gives Shay her pitch about how she's had a change of heart and she's here to stay, much to her friend's delight. Shay sees no plot holes here. Movie Tally is now at the smoke, and the description of the smoke in the book is similar to how they portray it in the movie. There are campfires everywhere, a little gardens, and a handful of buildings made of wood. My biggest problem with the movie's portrayal, though, is that the buildings are too curved and have a more modern feel to them. That doesn't really feel rustic or handmade. But now, instead of getting to experience it for ourselves, we have it explained to us by Shay in a cheesy monologue. It's harder than living in the city. We grow our own food, but you'll be surprised how much better it tastes when you grow it yourself. Everyone has to work, even our elders. We don't have money, so we share things and trade. But the most important thing, everyone is here because they choose to be here. It's exhilarating, and it's real. This monologue is played over scenes of Tally making mildly amused faces at the things she sees, including plants, an old man, a blanket, and things that are off-screen. Fun fact, the old man is actually Scott Westerfeld himself, the man who wrote these books. When Book Tally arrives at the smoke, she realizes where it gets its name from. All the smoke from the fires. She realizes in horror that they've been cutting down trees, and she asks them where they're getting all this wood from. Shay tells her it's okay because the pre-Rusties, the ancient civilizations, they lived this way too. And for all of the trees they cut, they're planting new ones to push into the orchid plague. But this only leaves Tally half convinced. She also notices that the kids here have hoverboards, and they've been making them work by putting their own metal grid in the ground, using metal from the old train track. The hoverable paths are outlined by rocks painted orange. Finally, Shay tells Tally she needs to meet the boss. They call him that because he's in charge of the library, which Tally is impressed by because, like in the movie, they don't have books in the cities. So these are all ancient artifacts now. When Tally sees the boss for the first time, she is disgusted by how ancient he looks. He's described as having wrinkled, vein hands and milky eyes. And guys, you're not gonna believe this, but he is a whopping 40 years old. As a woman in my 30s, I sure hope I don't look like that at 40. But of course, even if he did look good for a man in his 40s, it would still scare Tally because she was shocked by 18-year-old David not being pretty. She's never seen the natural aging process before. Shay then pulls out some old magazines to show Tally what the pretty standards were for our time. Tally sees people of all kinds of shapes and sizes being showcased as pretty, despite the fact that they were all ugly in Tally's eyes. In fact, they're so hideous to her that she is deeply disturbed by it. One of the models is very thin, and the topic of eating disorders is brought up. You see, ever since the operation became a thing, these disorders don't exist anymore, and it reinforces in Tally the fact that she does not want these times to return. She starts to grab at her pendant to end all of this right now, and even manages to open it when Shay catches her looking at it, and she asks her where she got it from. Shay assumes it was a last-minute fling, but she admits she always thought Tally was saving herself for Peris. Tally figures, since she's about to pull the trigger anyway, she might as well tell Shay the truth. But before she can, she's interrupted by the boss, who is very upset that Tally isn't wearing gloves to handle the magazines. In view of this scene, I just want to point out the absurdity of movie Shay walking around with an ancient book in the city, just handing it out to anyone who wants it for their reading pleasure. Such disrespect and disregard for a literal piece of fragile history would never be tolerated by the boss, who is sadly not in the movie. The lack of care also extends to things like cutting trees or old people existing. Movie Tally just has no reaction to any of these things, while Book Tally is over here having an existential crisis. Tally now has lunch with the Smokies and notices that despite being so young, they have the air of authority of a middle pretty. They talk about all the different projects they're working on around the camp, and then the attention turns to her. Some of the kids seem really homesick, so they ask her about things like sports or politics and other kids running away. And then finally they ask her about her journey. Tally finds that she actually enjoys the attention, and she's quite proud of herself for having survived a really dangerous situation on her own. David's not so happy. He chastises Shay for being too vague with her directions and tells Tally he's very impressed with her for making it without help. In the book, Tally isn't the only one that has ever made it alone, but it is rare. Rather than being seen as a suspicious thing, it's seen as a super cool thing. After lunch is finished, Shay and David tell Tally it's time to get to work. Now, movie Tally stands at the mouth of a cave with David, Shay, Croy, and the boy I believe is Asterix, though they never say his name. David explains to Tally that they keep their supplies here, and it doubles as a safe house because the cave has tourmaline, which blocks their scanners. I guess that's the specials scanners, but I do think it's weird that David never actually says who they are, including back in the helicopter when he said, "Are they ours or theirs?" It's not a big deal, just seems weird that they never once used the word specials like they do uglies and pretties. Like, if you never read the books, it makes everything a little bit less clear. Tourmaline, by the way, is a gemstone, and I did Google it, and it apparently does occur in Washington state where they live, but I have no idea if it can block anything because I don't know anything about rocks, but I did feel compelled to fact check if Washington has tourmaline. The scene then cuts to Shay piggyback riding Tally. By the way, I don't know why I find that so obnoxious. And she's explaining to her how they're pulling up the railroad tracks and using the metal to make everything ranging from pots and pans to garden gardening tools. So unlike in the book, they're not making a grid with it for hoverboards. Tally asks Shay if they're using the metal to make weapons, because remember, she's looking for a weapon, but Shay says that's not their style. The scene cuts again to Tally very obviously and unsneakily opening a cellar door to look for this weapon they allegedly have, which I guess it leads to a cave maybe? Either that or they just have a random concrete basement in the middle of the woods, but I don't know how it got there or why. But Croy sees her and is like, hello? And Tally says, oh, she was just looking for water, but Croy does not believe her. What a shocker. The scene then cuts back to that very same scene where Shay is piggyback riding Tally. They're still walking and talking, and she explains that they're not trying to make a change with weapons, but it's much bigger than that, and you'll see. And then they stop to talk to David, who is currently pulling up a piece of the railroad. It's time once again to read you the dialogue from the movie for this scene, because I found this conversation to be particularly annoying, and it feels unfinished. Hey, all right, your turn. What? Move a muscle, change a thought. Your culture. They trap you in front of screens. You never move. I move. I snuck out like almost every night in the city. Oh, my bad. Okay, fine. Yeah, why don't you give it a shot? Put your foot there, hold steady, and crank it. Wow, that's tough. Really good. Yeah, well, have at it. I gotta feed the rabbits anyway. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, I move. See, I stand corrected. Wow. I can't explain in any intelligent words why this felt so super awkward to me, but I don't know what emotions they were going for. I know what it's supposed to be in the book. In the book, Shay and David are a couple, but when Tally shows up, she has more chemistry with David, and that makes Shay jealous. But in the movie, Shay has no apparent relationship to David. So it's really weird that once Tally starts to pull up the track, Shay gets all weird and says she has to go feed the rabbits in a way that sounds kind of petty. And the chemistry between Tally's and David's actors is non-existent. Like, if this happened to me, I wouldn't even friend zone this person. It's not even giving sibling, it's giving nothing. Now, Book Tally is also at the train track with Shay and a few others. Shay shows Tally how to use the jack to pull up the track, and Tally thinks it's really cool and wants to do it. So Shay lets her, and they bond over this because Shay can see how excited Tally is. David does not feature in this scene like in the movie. A couple of hours pass, and Tally's hands are full of blisters, so David tells her to take a break. He says he's going scouting for another good place to keep pulling up the tracks, and she should come with him. As they travel, Tally notices how all of David's clothes are handmade, out of leather, and patched together like they've been worn and fixed many times. Tally finds the concept of leather disturbing because, you know, he's wearing dead animals, and this is a girl that doesn't even like killing trees. They get to a mountain with a tunnel where the track runs through. The problem is the tunnel has caved in, and David is worried that if they start pulling up the track in this area, the rocks can fall on them. They sneak inside through a small opening, and David shows her that the tunnel is only partially collapsed, so if they can figure out how to clear this area safely, they'd have access to tracks that aren't covered in vines and are much easier to pull out. Tally is skeptical though. She doesn't think they can achieve this safely, and David uses this as a segue into his analysis of Tally. He tells her he can see that she's struggling at the smoke. Some of the other kids think this is all some kind of big fun adventure, but Tally approaches everything in a pessimistic way and thinks everything is dangerous or scary. But that's actually what makes David like her, because he thinks people should be taking the dangers of nature more seriously. He expresses his annoyance with Shay, who is one of those this is all some fun adventure kind of people. Tally then wonders why the city doesn't just leave the smoke alone, since they're not bothering anyone. It's different from the movie, where they are very much actively antagonizing the city, and David lets her in on his little secret. He confesses that he was actually born out here in the wild and has never been in a city. His parents were the runaways, and they're part of the reason the city wants to take them down so bad. You see, they were doctors, and they performed the pretty surgeries, but after they ran away, they found a way to reverse the surgery, and they're both ugly right now, even though they were pretties at one point. Now Tally is very conflicted about activating her tracker, because she now knows that calling the specials here would actually cause a lot of harm to someone like David, and his parents will almost certainly be killed, and she doesn't want anyone to be killed. That night after dinner, Shay asked Tally what she was going to tell her about the necklace earlier. Remember, Tally was going to confess to Shay in the library before. Tally wants to come clean, but because of the David situation, she now feels she can't. She wonders if Dr. Cable will just let her go home empty-handed and have mercy on her. Shay guesses that Tally looks so conflicted because she told someone about the smoke, and whoever gave Tally that necklace knows the secret. Except Shay thinks this person is a crush Tally has, and she has no idea it's special circumstances. When Tally tells her, well, she's partially right, Shay doesn't seem to mind because, you know, Shay wasn't supposed to tell anyone anything either, and she broke the rule when she told Tally. Turns out the Smokies only reveal themselves to people they really trust and have known for a long time. But Shay hadn't known Tally long enough, and David specifically told her not to tell Tally. And now that Tally is here, and David knows Shay ignored his instructions, he's very mad at her, and he's been avoiding her. Shay then goes on to further prove David's point that she is not a serious person by telling Tally that she thinks the Smokies are too paranoid, and they spend way too much time trying to hide from the cities. Tally tries to persuade Shay that they might have a point in being paranoid, but Shay says, "Oh please, don't tell me you believe in special circumstances." Now, Tally feels really bad because Shay has no idea how dumb her decision was. Because David was right, she has endangered them all. And now, Tally is desperately trying to figure out how she can possibly get out of this situation without having to betray anyone. Now, in the movie, after that awkward David and Tally scene, they're also sitting at a campfire and it's dinner time. Shay sits next to David, and this is literally the only time in the whole movie that Shay shows any interest in him at all because she gives him a little bump on the shoulder. Tally takes a bite of the food and starts to cough because it's very spicy. This tracks with the book actually because it explains that city food doesn't have anywhere near as much flavor as the food of the smoke. I like that they kept that detail in, and I also like the touch of characterization they give to Croy, who apparently has a special spice that he makes himself. David then gives a speech about how the scouts, that's the specials, again I don't know why he calls them scouts, but he says they were seen at the helicopter fire in the flowers and that's the closest they've ever come. He explains that they stopped them, which they really didn't, they just ran away in a helicopter, and I'm surprised the specials didn't just follow them. And he also says they need to achieve their objective, which he doesn't explain what that is. He explains their ideology about how they're all about preserving nature and thinking, reading, etc., which we already knew. But he also doesn't offer a plan or anything, but everyone claps like what he said was super profound and intelligent, even though it was just empty words really. As he's talking, the scene cuts to Tally playing a game with Shay and the others. It's some kind of jumping game with sticks on the ground, and Tally seems mildly amused again. This scene literally only lasts for 2 seconds before cutting back to David talking at the fire. Some of these scenes are so short, I swear, they only did one take, said, yeah, that's good enough, and then later realized they only have 2 seconds of usable footage, and were like, okay, well, let's just slap it in here then. That's literally what it feels like sometimes. A short but indeterminate amount of time later, and I say short because Tally still has a cut on her forehead from when she arrived. Tally is out with David, and he's teaching her how to shoot with a crossbow. This scene is supposed to be romantic, but seriously, they have zero chemistry. Tally is terrible at using the crossbow and keeps trying until she manages to hit the target they're shooting. David is impressed by her not being a quitter, especially since he sees she has blisters all over her hands. Then, they're walking through the woods, and Tally asks him if he ever misses the city. He tells her he's never lived there before. And in the movie, it seems this is information that is just freely given, whereas in the book, David was hesitant, since not all of the Smokies know this about him right away. Movie David acts like it isn't really a big deal though, and Tally doesn't question it or act surprised at all. When he tells her his parents are here and they raised them themselves, Tally says she barely knows her parents. David informs her that that is not normal and not the way parent-child relationships should be. He also takes this moment to hand her a pair of gloves for her blisters. Tally barely manages to say thank you when they're interrupted by Shay and the others arriving on scene with an injured girl named Sailor. She is not in the book. They were apparently attacked by specials while burning the flowers again. So I guess the specials stayed in the area? But again, why don't they just follow the helicopter? Or if they're traveling by foot, they'd be super easy to track by the superhumans. How are they evading the specials? Also, where are the Smokies getting fuel for this helicopter? Sailor tells David these were not normal pretties. So this implies that in the movie world, regular pretties run special circumstances. That's why Dr. Cable is a regular pretty and not scary like in the book. I don't know why they made the main villain less scary on purpose, but I digress. They discuss how these guys have way faster reflexes, and David even remembers how he saw them run through the fire. But Tally doesn't seem to make a connection between these guys and Dr. Cable, because movie Tally wouldn't know these superhumans exist. She personally has never met one. Returning to the book, Tally has now been at the smoke for 2 weeks and has not activated the pendant. She still doesn't know what she wants to do, but she now knows she enjoys life here. For example, in the city, she had insomnia, but now she works so hard she sleeps well every night. She's also physically stronger and developing new skills. David's jacket of skins no longer horrifies her, and she's even come to appreciate hunting, because in the smoke, they only target invasive or overabundant species. One day, they're heading to the train tracks again when David hands her a present, all wrapped in everything. She opens it and sees that it's a pair of handmade gloves for her blisters, and they fit her hands perfectly. David says he made them for himself when he was younger, but they no longer fit him. Understanding the true value of these gloves, Tally really treasures them. People don't just give things away here in the smoke because everything has meaning and purpose. When they arrive at the track, there is a problem. Trees are growing throwing over parts of the track they need to cut. David votes for cutting the trees down and using them as firewood, but the city kids perceive this as clear cutting and push back on the idea. Croy tells David that these trees do serve a purpose here, so Tally suggests to only cut the parts of the trees that are in the way, leaving them intact as a whole. David allows it, but warns them it will be harder than they think. They work in pairs, and Tally ends up with Croy, who takes the chance to question her about something that's been puzzling him. So remember how interested Croy was in Tally's spag bowl before? Tally said before that she had 2 weeks worth of food on her journey, but according to the amount of spag bowl she has left, the math isn't mathing. Croy counted them. She's also been using them to trade for nice items like a new sweater and a new sleeping bag, which further confuses Croy because she has way more food than she should. Book Tally is not as bad a liar as movie Tally, but she's still not a great liar. So she just says, she wasn't eating a full 3 meals every day, whatever. And Croy does not buy it, and Tally knows he's onto her. When they break for lunch, Shay takes Tally somewhere private and says they need to talk. Tally thinks Shay has figured her out finally, but turns out she wants to talk about David. You see, Shay has seen the gloves, but when she shows Tally her hands, Tally can see that Shay also has blisters, and her hands are the same size as Tally's. So why didn't her boyfriend give them to her? Angrily, she tells Tally to tell David the truth about the heart necklace, because he needs to know she has someone else already. Tally promises she will, but she also knows Shay is sadly mistaken, and there is no love interest back in the city, so her hopes are empty. Back in the movie, this scene happens right after that injured girl sailor tells them about the specials. I do think there is a time skip though, but it's hard to tell with this movie. I don't know if this is happening immediately after or a few days after. So Tally has just gotten the gloves from David, and she has them on now. She goes with Shay to the river to get water, and Shay notices she's wearing David's gloves. Tally explains she was getting blisters, and that's why she has them. Shay has an angry response, and Tally is confused by this. She tells Tally that, things here have more meaning than at home, that David made these gloves, and him giving them to her means he likes her. She knows that Tally didn't come to the smoke with the purest of intentions, so she tells Tally she has to make a choice. So I guess Shay is angry about Tally potentially playing with David? I don't know. She also points out that Tally is still wearing the necklace from home, meaning she hasn't totally given up on the city, and she doesn't want her to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. The thing is, it's only been 10 minutes in the movie since she first found Shay again to now, so maybe time has passed, but to us, it doesn't feel that way at all. And it feels like Shay is rushing Tally and is unfairly angry at her too soon. At least in the book, we know it's been more than 2 weeks. And also Tally stole Shay's boyfriend, so the anger is warranted. The next day, I think, David is walking with Tally, and he asks her why she came here since Shay told him she didn't originally want to come. She says she wants to decide for herself who she is, but the choice has been hard since she heard they have a weapon and they plan on wiping out the city. David gets really serious and tells her to follow him. Book David sees Tally after her fight with Shay, and he apologizes to her, noting that she is no longer wearing the gloves. He says they need to talk. They walk off into the woods, and he tells her that she's the first person to ever come here alone. This does contradict what was said earlier though, because there is a line of dialogue where David says hardly anyone makes the trip alone. David is usually the one that brings the uglies to the smoke, and sometimes small groups of kids make it on their own, following coded notes like Tally, but they are always in a group. Maybe that's what David's referring to that other time, but I think it's worth pointing out that this is a possible contradiction. David feels he can trust Tally because she walked away from everything she's ever known all by herself without ever meeting a Smokey, just because she wanted to make sure Shay was okay. He also mentions that Croy told him about the spag bowl discrepancy, but he dismisses it since he knows Croy has been suspicious of Tally from the start. On the topic of Shay, David doesn't like how flaky Shay is. The first time she was supposed to run away, he knew she would chicken out. When she did show up, he was certain she would hate it here and go back home. He actually almost told her to just stay in the city and become pretty. And then she went and broke the rules by telling Tally about the smoke, which was the final nail in the coffin for their relationship. In contrast, Tally is brave and serious and determined. She understands that this isn't a game. She's not like the other girls. David asks Tally about the necklace, saying he knows someone gave it to her, and like Shay, he assumes it's a love interest. He isn't mad at Tally for telling someone about the smoke though, since she didn't know the rules. When Tally says that she might not stay here in the smoke, David says it's okay, but before she decides, he'd like her to meet his parents first. During this conversation, Tally realizes, she's attracted to David, which is shocking because she's only ever felt that way about pretties before, and she was taught that attraction is not possible unless someone is pretty. But like the book says, something had had turned his face pretty to her. This is a huge turning point for Tally, because now she can see that everything she's been taught about beauty and attraction is a lie. Movie David is also introducing Tally to his parents. It's implied, since you see them walking a ways away, that his parents don't live in the smoke. When they get to the house, it looks like others we've seen in the movie, made of wood with a mossy roof, but there's still something modern and not rustic feeling about it. David's parents come out to meet David and Tally, and he immediately tells them what's happening, that Tally thinks they have a weapon. They go inside and David's mom makes some tea. Once inside, Tally sees all of their books and finds out the book she read was David's father's. He is apparently a fan of Thoreau. This begs the question though, where did this man get all of these books from? Because the cities don't have them, and it's doubtful many have survived on their own in ruins for over 300 years. Of course, we also don't know where the boss got his books from either, but he's at least obsessed with preserving them and was likely a historian in profession, and David's parents are not. As the family is talking, Tally stares at them in awe, noticing how they all look alike, which is new for her because in the city, families don't resemble each other. You do get the surgery to fit a specific standard after all, regardless of DNA. Also, at one point, David says his dad needs a haircut, but this man barely has any hair. David says he wants to tell Tally the truth about everything, but his dad is hesitant, saying she hasn't been here long enough. But they do end up telling her. So they used to be surgeons, with David's mom being on the committee for morphological standards, and therefore having access to the entire database. And his dad was involved in research to make the surgery safer, since every year they would lose a few people due to how long they had to be under anesthesia. Anesthesia is not as safe as people think it is, even in real life. Tally is surprised to learn that people have died from the surgery. In truth, the number of deaths was actually pretty good for something so serious, but the city kept it hidden that it wasn't 100% safe or normal to just have major surgery like that. Anyway, during his research, and now with access to the entire database, thanks to his wife, he started to notice a pattern. Every single pretty had lesions in their brain. Lesions that were not there before the surgery. These lesions make it so that you can't feel intense emotions or think clearly. You are lulled into a false sense of happiness. Dr. Cable was the one that shut them down and took all of their research. So now they know for sure these lesions were being done on purpose and maliciously, so they fled. According to them, all of this happened because Cable wants control over people, and back in the day, she was actually friends with David's parents. Apparently, they had all been given the surgery at the same time, which I guess implies they all have the same birthday, but since they were strong-willed and rebellious even after their surgery, they were all invited to some kind of inner circle that gave them a cure for their lesions. That's why they were able to think critically, which led to them being able to discover these lesions and their purpose. I don't like how the movie makes it look like Cable is behind these lesions all on her own, and that other cities aren't mentioned. The world in the book is much larger, and Cable isn't in charge of it. Plus, who was the one that gave Cable her cure? And who started this inner circle? Anyway, David's parents started this whole smoke place as, I guess, a political social movement that fosters acceptance and free thinking, but that kind of sounds a little bit like a cult to me, just with the way they word it. Not that the city's any better, obviously. They're trying to come up with a cure for the lesions, but there is a very specific synthetic component they need, and you can only get that in the city, so they can't finish the cure. All they have right now is a base serum, which is the culmination of 20 years of research, and this is their so-called weapon, the one that will destroy Dr. Cable's regime. But even when it is done, they have to test it, and they need a willing volunteer to do that, to make sure it's safe. Tally suggests just kidnapping pretties since, you know, they're not in their right mind anyway, but David's parents are against this because they don't want to force anyone to do anything. That would make them no better than the city. After the conversation with David's parents, the two leave and it is now nighttime. Book David's parents, Maddie and Az, specifically live outside of the smoke for safety reasons. Their house is half carved into a mountain and one of the walls is just rock. David's parents again invite the two inside and the mom makes tea. Tally takes note of how similar David looks to his parents, and she also thinks it's interesting that he calls his parents mom and dad, since she calls her parents by their first names. Tally finds out his parents are actually from the same city as her, and like I already said, they were surgeons that did the pretty surgeries. She tells them a little bit of her story, and when she mentions Shay, she finds out David's parents have never heard of Shay, and when she looks at David, he just shrugs. When Tally drinks the tea Maddie made her, she is surprised by how bitter it is, and admits she's never had tea before. Az claims that it was very popular in the city before they left, and Tally says, well, it's mostly an old people drink, but then she feels embarrassed because she just called them old. David then tells his parents about how he wants Tally to know the full truth about things before she decides whether or not to return to the city. His His parents are not happy at all with this idea and think David has already said too much. They tell Tally that the truth is too dangerous for her to know, but when Tally goes, everything out here is dangerous. This apparently makes them see her as a mature person that can handle it. I assume this is like a very on-the-nose contrast with Shay, who thinks nothing is dangerous. When they tell her their story, it is very much like what they say in the movie. There are a few added details, such as how all of the cities try hard to be independent of each other, but each year they share their data so they can come up with a standard they all agree with, lest one city end up prettier than another. And there's also a detail about how Tally used to fantasize about being in the committee and getting to decide what the next generation would look like. Az originally thought the lesions were a side effect of the anesthesia, but when he showed Maddie, she looked at all of the data and found that not everyone had the lesions, and there was a very clear connection between them. Their jobs: firefighters, wardens, doctors, politicians, special circumstances, and rangers. So anyone whose job required them to come in contact with danger, make quick decisions, or came across a lot of challenges did not have the lesions. Seeing how the connection was clearly intentional, that's how they found out the lesions were a feature of the surgery, not a flaw. Just like in the movie, they were shut down by special circumstances, but no specific mention of Dr. Cable is made. She doesn't seem to have the same personal connection with David's parents that movie Cable has, nor does she seem to wield as much power as she does in the movie. After they got shut down, that's when they decided to run away. They don't know what the lesions do exactly, but their theory is that it makes people complacent, and that is the real reason for why all conflict in humanity is now gone. In the movie, David's parents stopped getting the surgeries and are now aging naturally. In the book, they took it a step farther and actually undid some of the surgery themselves. For example, Pretty's faces are shaped with a special kind of plastic. As they age and get more surgeries, the surgeons know how to soften the plastic to mold it like clay and reshape your face to whatever stage of life you're in. David's parents used this same method to just melt away the plastic so that their true bone structure shows. The reason they did this was so that Uglies would trust them more. It's kind of crazy now that we know about microplastics. Imagine having melted plastic in your body. Tally asked them if they have a cure for the lesions to reverse those too, but they don't. Since they aren't neurosurgeons, that's not something they specialize in. And after 20 years, they have no answers, but they do have a control group of kids who have aged with no lesions, the smoke. So they can prove there is a difference between lesions versus no lesions using these kids. But another reason they don't have a cure is because they don't even have a pretty subject to study, and they don't have modern scientific equipment out here either. But they know a cure does exist because obviously the governments have one. They also explain the reason nobody has really noticed these changes in people pre and post surgery before is because they simply don't know to look for it. It's so normal that you think any changes in personality are just attributed to maturing, which is why ugly behaviors are considered childish. This is not something that even the regulars at the smoke are aware of. The secret is kept very tightly under wraps, particularly because whoever comes here is allowed to go back to the city if they don't like it, and so they can't just announce what is happening to everyone, or they'll be caught immediately when word gets back to the city, which it will, because everyone will be trying to go rescue their friends. It's unclear in the movie if the Smokies know these things. Movie Shay often seems to imply that she knows, but book Shay definitely does not know. Plus, since the whole purpose of the smoke is to act as a blind control group for scientific research purposes, it wouldn't help very much if the Smokies knew anyway, even if they believed them. After this long conversation, Tally and David leave Maddie and Az's house and head back to the smoke. It is now late at night. In the movie, Tally is seen sitting in front of a campfire. She angrily pulls off her heart pendant and tosses it into the fire. She then tries to confess to David the whole truth, but he stops her and tells her he doesn't care about her past and just encourages her to move forward and do what she wants. She says that her actions make her feel ugly, but David tells her the way she thinks makes her beautiful, and they kiss. In the book, they have a longer conversation, and it's very meaningful to Tally. The two are just walking in the woods in the dark on their way back to camp. Tally asks David why they just let kids go back home without knowing the truth, but David explains all the same reasons I listed before. And like Tally has seen, many kids don't even believe in special circumstances, and they are naive enough to believe the government would never be that cruel, even if told the truth. That's why David likes her, because she isn't naive like that. But little does he know, it's because she has seen special circumstances face to face. David tells Tally that's what makes her beautiful. Which is very hard for Tally to accept that someone finds her beautiful given her upbringing, and he tells her her perceived flaws are actually what make her interesting. Tally then asks him if she's more beautiful than Shay, and then immediately feels guilty for asking. When David says yes, she feels really bad. But now that she realizes attraction is more complicated than her education would have her believe, she's finally able to let go of the propaganda for good, and her and David kiss. He does ask her about the heart pendant again, and thinking that now is the time to make a grand gesture, Tally runs all the way back to the smoke and makes this big display of tossing the pendant into the fire for David to prove to him that it doesn't matter anymore and that no one is coming anyway. David thinks this is dramatic and makes fun of her for it. Then he takes her to the bunkhouse and tells her goodnight. Shay is sleeping inside, which makes Tally feel horrible, and David tells her he has a lot of thinking to do, so he's just going to be out for a walk while everyone else is asleep, so he'll see her later. She goes to sleep in the bunkhouse with everyone else, and the next morning when she opens her eyes, she hears running and screaming and sees hover cars out the window. Now we are at part 3 of the book, Into the Fire, and its movie correspondent. We are now at page 231 of the book, which is about 70% of the way through. In the movie, we are 1 hour, 9 minutes, and 33 seconds in, which is also about 70% of the way through. This is the final third of the story. From this point on, it gets very action-heavy and dramatic. Also, it's where the movie makes the wildest changes. So in the movie, David and Tally wake up to the sound of hover cars flying above them, and they come rushing out of their tent, which implies they spent the night together? They don't seem to be at the smoke yet, so it's possible they camped out for the night on the way home. When they see the hover cars, they run after them. The scene cuts to the Smokies yelling about scouts, and now one of the worst action scenes I have ever seen in my life violates my eyeballs. I'm going to tell you everything in the order it happens. A Smoky runs and activates some kind of booby trap that creates a wall of fire between him and the scout chasing him. Shay starts looking for Tally and David. Tally and David are seen running toward the camp. The scout from before runs through the fire like it's nothing. Another scout chases a Smoky, but she gets caught in a net booby trap. Tally and David are running toward camp again. Croy punches a special. The scout in the net breaks free and starts chasing the second Smoky again. Croy is still punching the special, who is just standing there doing nothing. A fourth Smoky activates a trap that makes a log smash into a scout, but the scout is unharmed. Croy gets punched by the special in the chest. Shay is running with the fourth Smoky, and a special shoves the Smoky to the ground, but Shay keeps running, and then she gets clotheslined by a scout that was hiding behind a tree. David and Tally are hiding behind a tree watching. The forest is now on fire in different places because of the trap from before. A hover car is landing over the water, and everyone except for Tally and David has been captured and is now tied up and is all in a group on their knees. Guess how long that took? 1 minute. All of that happens in 1 minute in the movie, and it is nearly impossible to tell what is happening because of how fast it moves and how it keeps going back and forth and how closely cropped all of the scenes are. There are at least 20 cuts in this entire minute. I don't even think I counted them all. That leaves 3 seconds per shot, except the scene with the hover car landing is like 10 seconds long, so that actually leaves more like 2.5 seconds per shot. It seriously was almost incomprehensible. David and Tally are now hiding behind a pile of something as they watch, and Tally recognizes Peris among the specials. He still looks exactly the same as he did when he was a pretty, only he's wearing a different outfit, and I guess his eyes are blue now. Dr. Cable comes walking in through the mist, and David's parents get brought out, even though they're supposed to be living far away, so I don't know where they got them from. Maddie tells Dr. Cable it's time to let people choose, but Dr. Cable says it's Maddie who only wants people to have one choice, throwing it back at her. She then asks where their son David is, because he's the leader of the rebellion, which is weird because David is 18 and not even the founder of the smoke or the guy making the cures, but okay. David's parents refuse to answer, so Cable orders Peris to kill Az. Tally runs out to try to stop him, but it's too late. Peris has snapped Az's neck, and Az died for no reason because David and Tally are now there anyway, having given themselves away. David and Maddie cry over Az's body while Tally looks at Peris like, dude, and there's like a flicker of recognition on his face, but he acts like he doesn't know her and he walks back to Cable. Tally yells at Cable, you didn't tell me that you would hurt anyone, which immediately gives her away as a traitor, and Shay is devastated. David and Croy are horrified. When David isn't paying attention, Maddie secretly sticks something in David's pocket, and Cable tells Tally that she performed beautifully and that her procedure has been scheduled. In fact, all of their procedures have been scheduled. When Tally hears this, she runs away, unimpeded by these super speedy superhumans, goes into a building with tools in it, purposely spills gasoline everywhere, sets a fire with flint and steel, steals a crossbow, crossbow and jumps out the window while a special breaks his way in through the door. The building explodes, the special gets bonked in the head, Tally shoots another special in the shoulder with a crossbow, and then runs away without the crossbow. I have no idea what her plan here was, other than to distract, I guess. It did cause a good distraction, but I see no tactical benefit in anything she did. Did she really have to blow a building up? Like the building with all their weapons in it that they could use to defend themselves? Peris considers chasing her, but Cable stops him and says, "Let her be. She'll come to me eventually," which is wild. Like, just capture her. What the heck? David's mom also tells him to run, and he does. Again, not getting caught or pursued by any of the specials, even though he is their main target. And why the heck is there just like a shirtless guy here? I know I'm not the first person to ever bring him up. Other people saw this too, but like, why? Cable takes all of the Smokies prisoner, except for David and Tally, because I guess they no longer matter. She destroys Maddie's lab, and off they go back to the city. In the book, this went way differently. The specials in the book wait for everyone to be at the mess hall for breakfast to get them all at one location. Because Tally slept in, she isn't there. When she leaves the bunker to see what is happening, she sees the special calmly surrounding the mess hall and catching anyone that tries to escape. Because they are superhuman, there is no fight, and they're so frightening in appearance that most Smokies are too horrified to fight anyway. Tally hides behind some firewood where she also finds the boss hiding. One of the specials is guarding the woods. The boss wants to run into the woods with some of his books to preserve them, and he plans on attacking the special with hot chili powder. Maybe it's Croy's chili powder. But in order for it to work, they both have to run. One of them is going to have to get caught for the other to get away. Tally, unfortunately, has no shoes on, so she will be the one to stay behind and get caught. She runs toward the special that is monitoring the woods, but is immediately incapacitated and cuffed. The woman is so fast, she even has time to go after the boss too. But before she can, Tally manages to kick open the container of chili powder, and it does get in the woman's nose. The problem is, Tally also gets it in her nose. The special is caught off guard and screams some kind of alarm to the other specials. Tally has enough time to run into the forest and hide, but she desperately has to cough from the chili pepper. She manages to hold it until the feeling passes, but when she lets out the tiniest of breaths, a special hears it and immediately she is recaptured. The Smokies get rounded up into a rabbit pen and Tally gets thrown in with them. They label her as an armed resistor, which impresses Croy. No one has seen David and they don't know where he is. Meanwhile, the specials are scanning the kids and separating them into groups to take them back to their respective cities. Shay gets thrown into a pen and is labeled unarmed but dangerous, the special that captured her having a big bruise on his face. Shay is angry at Tally, mostly for stealing her boyfriend, but she also suspects she's the reason the specials came. Croy defends Tally, but as the specials come to collect him, Tally realizes, oh no, these specials are definitely from her city, but she has no idea how they got here because she destroyed the pendant. When they scan her, they immediately release her, which confirms to Shay that Tally is definitely the traitor, though no one else gets to witness this. Tally is brought to Dr. Cable, who is in the library reading a magazine. Tally plays along and decides to act like she's still allied with the specials, and the following conversation happens. Goodness, look at you. For someone who wants to be pretty, you're always such a sight. I've had a rough morning. You seem to have been in a scrape. I was just trying to get out of the way. Indeed, that's something you don't seem to be very good at. I guess not. I see we had you among the resistors. Some of the Smokies already suspected me, so when I heard you guys coming, I tried to get out of town. I didn't want to be around when everyone realized what was happening, in case they got mad at me. Self-preservation. Well, at least you're good at something. I didn't ask to come here. No, and you took your time too. How long have you been here exactly? Not that long. You didn't get here as quickly as I'd hoped. I almost didn't make it at all. And when I did, it was ages after my birthday. That's why they suspected me. I suppose I should have been worried about you. Out in the wilderness all alone. Poor Tally. Thanks for your concern. I suppose you would have used the pendant if you'd gotten into any real trouble, self-preservation being your one skill. Unless I'd fallen off a cliff, which almost happened, well, we still would have come for you. If the pendant had been damaged, it would have sent a signal automatically. Speaking of which, where is it? So now Tally knows why the specials came. It's because she threw the pendant in the fire. Something I forgot to mention is that movie Tally never questions how Dr. Cable found her. Dr. Cable never explains anything about the pendant, and Tally wasn't even at the camp when she burned the pendant because she was farther away. It took her and David a minute to run over to where everyone else was. Anyway, Book Cable tells Tally to find the pendant because she doesn't want to leave any loose ends. Tally claims to have hidden it after activating it because she knew the Smokies can detect bugs, and she didn't want to be seen with it. Cable sends her with an officer to go find it, and they purposely make her look like she's a prisoner to not blow her cover, just because of how concerned she is that the Smokies will be mad at her. Cable apparently doesn't want her to to lose all her friends. So she's handcuffed, she's shoeless, and she knows her hoverboard is charging on the roof of a nearby building. She tells the officer she threw the pendant up there. He goes up there, but he can't find it. So Tally tells him it's by the rap chuck, which is gibberish, of course, but it frustrates the special enough that he brings her onto the roof with him to look. Tally can see a fully charged hoverboard nearby, but she needs to get rid of the handcuffs before flying. So she starts to exaggerate how hard it is to balance on the roof, even falling on purpose because she knows the special will catch her and not let her be harmed. As expected, he saves her with his superhuman reflexes, but he ends up falling off the roof himself to toss her up in the process. He's fine because he's superhuman, but in that 1 second she's alone on the roof, she has time to kick the hoverboard closed because remember, they have to unfold to charge. She then purposely trips a second time, and he gets so impatient with her that he snaps the chain on the cuffs so that she can balance with her hands. Now that she's free, she snaps her fingers to call the board to her, and it flies to her faster than the special can react. She gets on and takes off. But remember, she is still barefoot and has no crash bracelets. Thank goodness she happened to sleep with her belly sensor on that night, which is how she was able to call the board to her to begin with. But now she's seriously struggling to stay on board and not get killed. The Smokies all see her flying away and cheer for her, since the majority don't know she's a traitor. As she books it to the railroad, she also learns this is Croy's hoverboard, and it does not know her movements. His board is also slower than hers. She ends up having to get on her knees and gripping the board with her hands to stay on. The specials chase her in a hover car, and they're faster than her, but she can turn tighter than them, so they keep overshooting her. Plus, they can't fly below the tree line. She deduces that they're tracking her using infrared, so she decides to head to the tunnel where her and David had been before. The cave will mask her heat signature. She gets to the cave as fast as she can, and once she's in, she kicks the hoverboard away so that it takes off down the railroad in the opposite direction. It won't come back to her because she has no crash bracelets. The specials will likely see the lone hoverboard, think she fell in the river, and look for her there. Now safe in the cave, she goes in as deep as she can and ends up running into David, who has also been hiding here. David explains that he spent the night on top of the hill to watch the sunrise. He saw the specials arrive and immediately ran and hid. But Tally has to lie to him about how she escaped because David doesn't know the truth about her relationship with Cable, and she's not about to tell him. They don't know where David's parents are and are worried, so Tally tells David they'll go back to the city and save them all because that's where they'll be. She tells him she knows where Special Circumstances is because she's been there, but she lies about why, using the bungee jacket story as an excuse. But David buys it, and he thinks this must be why Tally is different from the others, because she has seen specials before. Now back to the movie. Tally is left in the woods alone after the attack. No idea how Cable thinks Tally is getting back to the city, but hey, movie Cable doesn't really seem to think much at all. Tally goes to the cave where the Smokies keep their supplies. Remember the one with tourmaline from before? And David is also in there getting some things. As soon as David sees Tally, he pulls a knife on her and holds it to her throat because he's angry, and understandably so. Tally tells him in a panic that she tried to destroy the pendant and she didn't know that it would call them. David lets her go and she apologizes, saying that they threatened her and made him seem like the villain, but now that she knows the truth, she would never want to turn pretty. David just turns around and keeps packing his stuff, and he says he's going to go to the city to save them all. Tally says she wants to go with him because he's never been to the city before and she knows the building they're taking his mom to. But David flat out says he does not trust Tally, nor should he. Tally replies with, "You don't have to trust me, you just have to follow me." Which is not a very convincing argument because what does that even mean? He could be following her straight to Dr. Cable, but this is apparently enough for David, who a second ago was ready to kill her. So together they fly the helicopter to the city. Now Book, David, and Tally leave the cave the next day and check the smoke to see if anyone else got away. Plus, they need food. Tally sees that everyone has taken their shoes off as a gesture to her because Croy recognized her when she ran away on his hoverboard and knew that she was barefoot, so they wanted her to have something to wear when she returns. At this point, Shay is the only one that knows for sure Tally is a traitor. Tally takes a pair of shoes, and as she continues her search, she finds the boss. Unfortunately, he did not make it. It seems as if he was killed by a special in a struggle. The bag of magazines, I said books earlier, but they were actually magazines, were still intact though. So Tally takes them with her because the library has been burned down and this is all that's left. Now David immediately heads to his parents' house because he's worried they got discovered. Tally tries to reassure him by saying the only reason the boss died is because he tried to fight them, but David says grimly that so would his parents. The house has been burned down, but they don't see any human remains. David thinks they've been captured though because his dad left behind his favorite knife and he never would have left that. He uses it to try and cut off Tally's cuffs that are still on her wrists, but they are not breaking because they're made out of some kind of insanely strong material. He asks Tally how she even managed to cut the links in the first place, and why does she have 2 pairs of cuffs on her wrists? And Tally tries to lie by saying she cut them on a rock, but as his knife is from the city and it's very strong. It doesn't make any sense, but David doesn't catch the lie because he's pretty distracted about his parents. He shows her his parents' secret supplies in a nearby cave, and there they end up finding food and enough survival gear to make it to the city. David estimates it will take about 10 days for them to get to the city because they're each riding 2 hoverboards stacked on top of each other and carrying a ton of supplies, so they can't go very fast. This is all for their friends for when they rescue them. On their journey, they also end up getting hit by a hurricane and they can't even move for 3 days. They end up talking about their childhoods and bond a lot, but David is worried they're taking so long that everyone will be turned pretty by the time they arrive. Which I'm not really sure how long it takes to prep someone for a surgery of this magnitude, but I suppose 2 weeks is a long enough time period if you're really determined. But how fast do they heal? Because in both the movie and the books, I never hear of downtime after the surgery, and they both seem to imply you're fine within the next couple days. But Tally does reassure David, telling him that it takes time to prep people. So it is canon that there is a specific time period needed before the surgery. Back to the movie. At first, I actually didn't know how they got back to the city, but yes, there is a 3-second clip of the helicopter flying, so I missed that the first 10 times I watched this, and I was really confused because I really did not know how David and Tally got back to the city. They fly back to the city and head to the Ugly dorms. There, Tally finds a girl called Sussy. She was actually one of Shay's friends, the one that had read the book and was talking to Shay in that assembly scene at the beginning. Sussy is there with her 2 other friends that we have also seen in the background. She's surprised to see Tally and says she heard the smoke was destroyed, though I'm not sure from who, since who would tell her? They're all in prison. Anyway, Tally calls over David to prove to them that he does indeed exist, and they tell Sussy and her 2 friends to create a diversion for them. And Tally also takes Sussy's interface ring, because remember, Tally doesn't have one on her right now. She tells them to write "The smoke lives" in the sky, and then leaves with David for the next part of their plan. Now David and Tally are at the Special Circumstances building, and they wait for the hovercar entrance to open. It doesn't take long because the 3 kids did as Tally said and wrote "The smoke lives" in the sky in what seems to be fire. The movie doesn't explain how they did it, and the effects look terrible. The specials start sending out cars to investigate, and after they leave, David and Tally hoverboard to the still open entrance and dive in before it closes, leaving the boards behind. They have bungee jackets on, and that causes them to land safely at the bottom. The movie doesn't explain how they got the bungee jackets. It also doesn't explain how they managed to get to the top of the Special Circumstances building unnoticed, and they're really lucky no one was there at the bottom when they landed, because it's kind of weird that the building would just be empty. David and Tally then sneak around and try not to get caught by various wardens as she takes them to where she thinks the others are being kept. I also don't know why this looks like some kind of factory. This room is never explained. Book Tally and David arrive at the city after 13 days and find the Special Circumstances building. They can't get near it because it has sensors everywhere, and the perimeter is too high for hoverboards to fly over it. So they come up with the idea to fly up a nearby hill as fast as they can on their hoverboards and use that momentum to free fall onto the top of the building. But in order to do that safely, they need bungee jackets, so they steal them from the basement of the art supply room in Uglyville, which is something that Tally and Shay had already done before when they played a prank on the new Uglies together in the past. Now with their plan and their bungee jackets ready, they wait until nightfall. As they wait, they see someone light up a sparkler by the ruins and realize there are Uglies out there still trying to find David and the smoke. Of course, none of them know what happened, so they have no idea that no one's gonna show up. But emboldened by the idea that they have allies in the city, they decide to reveal themselves to them. They wait for the Uglies to pass by where David and Tally are hiding, and when they do, David pops out with a flashlight to his face and says, "Looking for me?" These kids are Sussy and her friends, Anne and Dex, who are given names in the book, but not the movie. I think I said that already, I can't remember. They tell them to create a diversion that could help them get some specials out of the building to increase their chances of succeeding. They also tell them to get every single Ugly they know to go out hoverboarding to create traffic, making it harder for the ships to pursue them at full speed when they're escaping. When night falls, they see the diversion the kids came up with. They use safety sparklers to write "The smoke lives" in really big letters on the ground in one of the pleasure gardens in New Pretty Town. As expected, this gets Special Circumstances attention, and they send 3 hovercars to investigate. So now David and Tally turn their crash bracelets off so that their hoverboards don't follow them when they free fall, and they proceed with the plan to land on the roof of the Special Circumstances building. The momentum is a lot, so it really hurts when the bungee jackets catch them to stop them from dying, and Tally actually bounces away from the building, but she manages to grab a rain gutter to stop from overshooting. No sensors go off, and the roof seems to be safe. They see the opening for hovercars, but can't get in, and even if they did, they are not hovercars, so they will immediately be caught. But David has this super strong nanotech glue from his parents' supplies that he uses to glue the hovercar entrance shut just for good measure, making it harder for the specials to go in and out as they please. They then use a jack to open the elevator on the roof and jump down the shaft, again saved by bungee jackets. Now on top of the elevator car, they hear voices inside, which tells them the building is not empty. They reach the doors of the floor above them and wrench them open with a jack, but that floor is empty and looks like a hospital wing, probably where the special surgeries are done. This makes more sense than a random conference room with 3 pods in it like in the movie. Also, pretty surgeries are still done elsewhere. The specials don't concern themselves with that. Movie Tally tries to hack a door with Sussy's interface ring, the way she did with the kitchen with Shay at the beginning of the movie, but it doesn't work. The movie doesn't explain this, but it's because the world is set up specifically to allow Uglies to play pranks, because it allows the system to suss out who's going to be a troublemaker in the future and therefore a candidate for the kinds of jobs that don't require lesions. But you don't find that out until later books. But of course, Special Circumstances isn't going to be hackable since Uglies aren't supposed to be there. Since Tally can't hack the door, they're sitting ducks. The door opens and a special is there. He doesn't seem to be one of the fancy specials that Peris is, so I guess that's how David is able to immediately incapacitate him. This of course wouldn't work with the specials from the book. Tally takes this guy's interface ring and now has access to the whole building. Woohoo. An alarm goes off and David and Tally run around the building yelling everyone's names. They can hear them yelling back from behind one of the doors and they open it. As they're all running out and trying to escape, Croy decides that now is an excellent time to yell at Tally and call her a traitor. But David stops him, hugs his mom, and then Tally gets to ask where Shay is because she's not with them. Croy says she got taken to surgery. Upset, Tally doesn't want to leave without Shay, so she says she has a plan. David, Tally, and Maddie all run around together screaming Shay's name, and in this building, where all of the walls and doors look alike, they somehow know immediately where to go. Now, to be fair, Tally has been here before, to this specific floor, but if the fate of the world were in my hands, I definitely would have gotten lost. Anyway, Tally assumes Shay will be in this conference room place with the surgery pods, so that's where they go. And when they arrive, Shay is standing in an empty room by herself wearing a full-length dress and looking like she's ready to walk down the red carpet. Why is Shay in here alone and fully dressed for a party? And how is she healed already? How long has it been since the surgery? What is the recovery time for these surgeries? Why isn't she in New Pretty Town where pretties go? Anyway, Shay seems really happy to see Tally at least, and she tells her she got to be the first one because she caused the most trouble. And she seems to have totally forgotten all about her beef with Tally, even asking her if she's jealous now because she got her eyes to be gold, just like Tally always wanted. I like to think that was a decision Ugly Shay made before going down for the surgery just to piss Tally off. Now the door opens behind them and Peris appears, trapping them in the room. And then Dr. Cable comes from somewhere else inside this room, I don't know, and tells them they need to get the surgery. All 3 of them, right now. So they all get threatened into going into the pods, and there are exactly 3 pods, and coincidentally, there just so happen to be 3 of them too. I told you this would come back around, but wait, there's more. By the way, this is not how the surgery works in real life or in the books. There is prep time. Measurements need to be taken. Scans need to be done. Schematics need to be drawn. You need doctors there. We know this because there are doctors in this world, and we saw with Peris' surgery, there were nurses and doctors there turning knobs and hitting buttons. These guys are still wearing their clothes. You can't just be fully clothed for a full body surgery. If it was so easy, they would have operated on more people than just Shay by now. Why didn't they do 3 people at one time if they have 3 pods? The only way I can see this making sense is if Dr. Cable literally doesn't care and just wants to torture these 3 specifically to death under the guise of surgery. But then why have Shay there to watch? Shay is pretty. She forgot everything. She can go free and she won't tell anyone. While in her pod, Maddie looks around the room and she sees where the nanosynth is being kept. The thing she needs to finish the cure for the lesions. It's in a very clearly marked briefcase in a shelf very close to her. How convenient. Cable gives her evil villain speech about how people are happier with the pretty surgery. It's nothing new or interesting. The surgeries begin, but this time there are no doctors or nurses in the room, so I have no idea who is controlling the things. At this exact time, Croy is seen pulling up to that awfully convenient giant glass window I mentioned before with the helicopter, and he has the flamethrower pointed right at it. He breaks the window and sets the room on fire while his friends are still in it and in a vulnerable position in surgery pods. If he had waited a second later, they would have been probably cut open and unable to escape or survive. So I'm sure glad he showed up just in time and that no one in the entire city noticed this helicopter. A piece of tech that should be extinct, flying around. Also, Peris seems to be bothered by the fire here, but he is fireproof. We have established this. The chambers go into evacuation mode and stop right before poking their eyes out, because that's definitely something they have to do to make you pretty, is take out your eyes, I guess. I really think Dr. Cable just wanted to kill them. Croy specifically aims at the surgery pods with the flamethrower. All the glass breaks and they are free, but miraculously unharmed. Peris is still in there somewhere, so I'm not sure what he's doing because he isn't supposed to be fazed by the fire, and Dr. Cable has disappeared. David's mom grabs the briefcase she needs and they escape, taking Shay with them. I don't really know how they get out of the room. I guess with the interface ring. I don't know how they don't get stopped because there are other people in here. We saw them. They head up to what I guess is the roof, but before they can hop onto the helicopter, Peris is there. Tally tries to talk to him and she sees his hand has been cut by glass, but he doesn't seem to notice. She shows him her hand and now they have matching scars again. Peris raises his hand to touch Tally's cheek, but David interprets this as Peris going in to snap Tally's neck. So he tackles Peris to the ground, but Peris kicks his butt because he's superhuman. Tally somehow gets a hoverboard off screen and runs into Peris with it to get him to stop. Peris falls and is now hanging off the side of the building right over the giant dam waterfall thing. He has a brief Mufasa moment before falling seemingly to his death into the water. Also, Tally did like nothing to help him, by the way, even though she was clearly distressed by him falling, but she does not attempt to help him, like at all. But don't be sad because Peris is likely not dead, since as we've seen in the book, specials can survive practically anything. Now, David, Maddie, Tally, and Shay all run off on their hoverboards. I don't know why they didn't take the helicopter. I thought they were trying to get on the helicopter, but I guess I misunderstood. And hover cars above them crash into each other for reasons unknown to me. Back in the book, David and Tally leave the empty hospital floor. They take the stairs to the floor below them and see that these are detention and interrogation rooms. These doors are too smooth for them to open with their jack, but as they try to find an alternative, they hear Dr. Cable coming. They don't really have time to do anything, so Tally immediately gives herself away and tries to act like she's turning herself in. Dr. Cable is understandably thrown off, and with the brief moment of distraction, David sneaks up on her and knocks her out with the jack. This would normally kill a person, but you know, since Cable is superhuman, she's okay, just temporarily down. And then Shay shows up, since she had actually been in the middle of a conversation with Cable. She sees them, and she sees Cable on the floor, and she goes, "Oh, hi guys." They can see that she has been turned pretty, and is now weirdly not mad at Tally anymore. In fact, all she says as she looks down at Cable's body is, "What's with her? She's gonna be in a bad mood tomorrow thanks to you two." Shay explains that she's been living in New Pretty Town and is in fact currently drunk from a party. Like in the movie, she was the first to be turned because of how much trouble she caused. The reason she's here today is to help Dr. Cable interrogate the others, who are still being held prisoner. She insists that everyone will be fine and stop being so grumpy once they've had their operations, and Dr. Cable gets over her stupid power trip. Again, I do have to point out that the recovery time for these surgeries seems to be insanely fast. It's only been 13 days. Given that we know there's a prep time before the surgery, Shay likely is only 1 week post-op tops. That means she completely recovered and looks normal in 1 week. At the very least, she should still be experiencing the sunburn feeling on her skin that was mentioned earlier in the book. Also, we do get a little bit of a reason for why only Shay was turned and not the others. You see, Shay's case is closed now. She is back home. But the others have been out in the smoke longer, and it makes sense that Cable wants to interrogate them before giving them a lobotomy. Now I want to read the conversation between Shay and the others just to give you a good idea how much Shay has changed. And keep in mind, this is happening literally right after they knock out Cable, and they are currently standing over her body. So how are you two doing anyway? We're good. That's great. Listen, sorry I was such a pain about all that. You know what uglies are like. Well, of course you do. So you don't hate me? Don't be silly, Tally. I'm glad to hear that. You did me a big favor getting me out of that smoke place. You can't really believe that, Shay. What do you mean? How could you change your mind so quickly? It took me exactly 1 hot shower to change my mind. Speaking of showers, you are a total mess. So yeah, I just wanted to show you a little bit of Shay's transformation. It's a lot like in the movie where she is a completely different person, but I do think book Shay is funnier in a tragic way. While Cable is down and Tally and Shay are talking like this, David uses the jack to free the others from their cells. He was able to find them because Shay told them where they were being held. Dr. Cable gets a call on her tablet, so Shay answers it and makes stuff up to buy time. She no longer identifies as a Smokey, but she is still loyal to her friends and disagrees with keeping them locked up. The second Maddie is freed, she takes charge as the adult. She tells them they need Cable's body because they need her eye for the elevator scanner, and then she takes Cable's interface ring as well. They ride the elevator to the top, David and Tally turn their crash bracelets on, and call the hoverboards to them. Their plan is to all get on the boards and split up. There are currently 7 of them and 4 hoverboards. So Maddie tells Tally to take Shay, Ride will go with Asterix, Croy will go alone, and she will go with David. However, there is one person missing, and that's David's dad. So she breaks the news to her son that unfortunately, Az is dead. But none of them have time to process that right now because they have to take off. Before leaving, Maddie makes them all glue the hatches on the roof shut with the nano glue, and they also jam the elevator shut with the jack. The specials have now been alerted to their presence, but they're stuck in the building. They all get on their respective boards. Maddie rips the trackers out of their prison uniforms and gives them to Tally, telling her to throw them in random places to throw the specials off. Tally and Shay then take off together and do that, but it isn't easy because Shay is drunk, not wearing crash bracelets, and also seems to have forgotten how to ride, so she's slowing Tally down considerably. They all agree to meet up in a cave hidden by a waterfall, but they're going to take different routes there to shake the specials. Remember, they prefer caves so that they aren't found with infrared. Only David and Maddie plan to go to the ruins and be alone for a while because they need to process the death of Az and the loss of David's only home and the loss of 20 years of research. So they're gonna meet up with everyone else later. Back to the movie, all of the escapees end up at the rusty ruins in that one building with the collapsed roof. They reunite with Croy and the other guy, Ride, whose name is never actually said. I don't know why I wrote that so many times in the script. It really bothers me that Ride's name is not mentioned. And Maddie announces that they have what they need to make the cure because she got the nanosynth from Cable's lab, and the thing she snuck into David's pocket earlier when they were all getting captured was the serum. Tally is happy because she says they can cure Shay, but Shay says she doesn't want to be cured, and she thinks they're all crazy and full of paranoia, and she doesn't want to be like them. She says she's only here because she feels bad for Tally. The Smokies debate on whether or not to just force the cure on Shay anyway, but Maddie says it isn't right because they don't even know if the cure will be safe, and it's important to get Shay's consent, even if her brain has been messed with, because that's the difference between them and the city, which forces procedures without consent. Tally says she's willing to be their test subject, let the city turn her pretty, and then they can find a way to get her and turn her back. David points out that Cable could probably just kill her instead, and Maddie reminds Tally that there are serious risks involved in this plan. But Tally is determined to do this to prove to everyone that there is a cure, it does work, and maybe it will help convince Shay to take it too, and then eventually everyone else. She says once she's turned pretty, she will leave them a sign. She never really tells them what the sign will be, though. And then she apologizes to Croy for being right about her, but he says he wasn't right, indicating that he has forgiven her already. The hovercars of the specials can be seen flying toward them from a distance, so everyone gets ready to leave. Tally tells David that if he comes back for her, she knows he's forgiven her, and David just responds by saying, "She's so beautiful," which is wild, because 14 minutes ago, he had a knife to her throat. Everyone leaves except for Shay, because she's pretty and wants to go back to the city, and as the hovercars close in, we see Dr. Cable is in one of the hovercars. She's completely okay, by the way, as if she wasn't just in an explosion and set on fire, but she does have a weird scar on her face, but it doesn't look fresh, even though this thing happened literally minutes ago. It actually kind of looks like someone just took a texture in Photoshop, slapped it over a face, and changed the blend mode. I know, so relatable. Tally says, "I'm Tally Youngblood, make me pretty," and the screen fades to black. Back in the book, they are all in this cave together, except for Maddie and David. Shay won't stop complaining, saying that she didn't even want to be rescued as the Smokies fawn over her because she's pretty now and she has that pretty privilege. That is really hard for them to resist. And still, no one knows Tally is a traitor. The only one that did is brain damaged and technically still remembers, but doesn't feel the need to bring it up because she doesn't care. When David and Maddie do meet up with them again, Maddie shows them that she kept Cable's tablet, which has all of the operation data on it, including the cure for the lesions. Now she finally knows what she needs to do. So for the next 20 days, they head to the rusty ruins and live there while Maddie works on making the cure. The reason they have to head back to the ruins is because they need access to technology they can only get from the city. So they start a little smuggling operation between them and the Uglies still in the city that are interested in the smoke. At this point, Maddie has decided to stop being so secretive and just tell everyone who's interested about what they're doing. So more and more Uglies are sneaking out to meet them and find out the truth. They start calling themselves the New Smoke, and their influence on the city kids begins to grow. On the 20th day, Maddie has successfully recreated the cure. They try to convince Shay to take it, and the conversation goes like this. "Shay, I want to explain this to you carefully." "Sure, Maddie. When you had the operation, they did something to your brain. Yeah, right. That's what Tally keeps telling me, but you guys don't understand. What do you mean? I like the way I look. I'm happier in this body. You want to talk about brain damage? Look at you all, running around in these ruins playing commando. You're all full of schemes and rebellions, crazy with fear and paranoia, even jealousy. That's what being ugly does. And how do you feel, Shay? I feel bubbly. It's nice not being all raging with hormones. Of course, it kind of sucks being out here instead of in the city. No one's keeping you here, Shay. Why haven't you left? I don't know. I'm worried about you guys, I guess. It's dangerous out here, and messing with specials isn't a good idea. You should know that by now, Maddie. And you're going to protect us from them? I just feel bad about Tally. If I hadn't told her about the smoke, she'd be pretty right now, instead of living in this dump. And I figure she'll eventually decide to grow up. We'll go back together. You don't seem to want to decide for yourself. Decide what? You weren't always this way, Shay. No, I used to be ugly. These pills won't change the way you look. They'll only affect your brain, undoing what Dr. Cable did to the way your mind works. Then you can decide for yourself how you want to look. Decide? After you've messed with my brain? Shay, we're not the ones messing with your brain. Tally, that's right. I'm the one who's crazy. Not you guys who live in a broken down building on the edge of a dead city, slowly turning into freaks when you could be beautiful. Yeah, I'm crazy all right, for trying to help you. How are you helping us, Shay? I'm trying to get you to understand, just like you did when Dr. Cable used to bring you by my cell. I know Dr. C was horrible to you. The specials are psychos, just look at them. But that doesn't mean you have to spend your whole lives running away. That's what I'm saying. Once you turn, specials won't mess with you anymore. Why not? Because you'll be happy, like me. You won't take these willingly. No way. You said they're not even safe. I said there was a small chance something could go wrong. You must think I'm nuts. And even if those pills work, look what they're supposed to do. From what I can tell, cured means being a jealous, self-important, whiny little ugly brain. It means thinking you've got all the answers. In a lot of ways, you and Dr. Cable are alike. You're both convinced you've personally got to change the world. Well, I don't need that, and I don't need those. Okay then, that's all I have to say. So yeah, they don't force the pills on Shay because she is happy and she has free will. Maddie even says it's logical because Shay doesn't want to take a huge risk on a strange medication. One of the reasons Maddie is so big on Shay's consent is because of the way Az died. You see, the reason he died was because Cable was using him as a guinea pig for an experiment involving erasing memories. So consent is just extremely important, and Maddie doesn't want to be a hypocrite. After a conversation with Maddie, Tally volunteers to get turned pretty herself so they can try the cure on her. David does not like this idea, but now Tally feels it's the time to confess everything about how she was the traitor all along, and that's why she needs to be the one to fix it. Maddie is not surprised because apparently Dr. Cable told her everything, but she had just decided to keep it to herself this whole time and let Tally confess on her own. Maddie is 100% behind this idea because she's very angry at Tally. Tally is the reason her husband is dead after all, so she makes it very clear this is payback and the best way for Tally to make reparations. Completely in shock, David just leaves. He's so angry and in disbelief that he doesn't even say goodbye. And Maddie tells Tally that she needs to go turn herself in right now before anyone has the chance to talk her out of it. But before she leaves, Maddie's going to need written consent. The only problem is Tally doesn't know how to write. Maddie offers to write for her, but Tally wants Shay to do it because Shay did learn how to write by hand in the past. So that's what they do, and the deal is sealed. Shay thinks that she has successfully changed Tally's mind and takes full credit for Tally being turned pretty. She is so excited as they head back to the city together, and Croy goes with them to take the hoverboards back when they're gone. Even though Croy is stunned by Tally's confession, he thanks her for saving him, and he says he hopes to see her again. As they approach the city, a warden sees Shay, a pretty, and Tally, an ugly, walking together, and is visibly confused. He approaches them and goes, "Who are you?" To which Tally responds, "I'm Tally Youngblood, make me pretty." And that is the end of the book. But not the end of the movie, because there's one more scene. In this last scene, you see the back of a woman with blonde hair walking through a pretty room, and a computer is talking to her, asking how she is healing from her procedure and how she feels. The woman says she loves the new her and looks out a window, showing that she is in New Pretty Town. But as she says, "I love being pretty," she looks down and you see a scar on her hand. So this is Tally, now pretty, but she kept her scar, hinting that her old memories may still be in there somewhere. I don't know why they would let her keep the scar, but I already ranted about that with Peris. But that concludes the movie. Okay, so these are my overall thoughts on the movie. The Uglies movie misses the point of the book and muddles the plot, while also cutting out a lot of character development. The actors don't seem like they're reacting to each other naturally and are just following a script, and I think that's because of the bad dialogue they were given. The visuals range from pretty good in the beginning to okay in the middle to extremely ugly in the end. The camera angles are way too close in the action scenes and make it very hard to tell what's going on. And the scenes are choppy and too short to fully process what just happened, even after watching the movie several times for this review. The back and forth between present and past is something that can be very interesting if done right, but this movie doesn't do that right, because in my opinion, they only did it to make it feel less boring and not for any narrative or creative purpose. It would be more like me editing this video so that all of my talking points are out of order and have no context. I don't think you'd enjoy watching that, even if you do enjoy watching me. I don't like this movie, but not because everyone else said it was bad. It's because I genuinely wanted to like it and am extremely familiar with the source material and have wanted an Uglies movie forever, and I hate how it wasn't true to the spirit of the series, treats me like I'm dumb, and had moments where it genuinely felt like zero effort was put into making it good. The characters. I don't know why they changed the characters as much as they did, and I especially hate what they did to Peris and Dr. Cable. Scott Westerfeld said in an interview that it had to do with how things are different on screen versus on paper. And I get that 100% adaptations are probably not possible, but these changes feel like they were made because, number one, they wanted a love triangle, which they could have already had with Shay and Tally and David, like the original book, so it's weird that they didn't just use that one, and two, they didn't want to put in the time, money, and effort to actually give people like Dr. Cable or the Pretties extreme looks. And three, they wanted Shay to be a girl boss activist that don't need no man, which is definitely not who she was in the book, and I don't appreciate the fact that they changed her just to change her. Same with David. Original David is not an activist rebel. He's a kid that lives in the woods. An 18-year-old kid that is not the leader of anything, that has his own problems. I don't like how they made him forgive Tally so easily by the end of the movie, because his dad literally died because of her. His home was destroyed because of her. She lied to and betrayed him, and he gets over it immediately when in the book he doesn't even talk to her again until like the end of the second book. And even then, they do not resume their romantic relationship until I think the very end of the fourth book, where Tally isn't even the main character anymore. It takes a long time and a lot of stuff happening for them to be on good terms again. Peris doesn't even matter in the books, and I guess Scott in retrospect was like, well, I shouldn't have made a character like that just for him to fizzle out in the story, so this time around I'll give him more prominence. But Peris getting turned into a special doesn't make sense. He has done nothing to prove that he deserves that role. And him having romantic feelings for Tally is annoying, because their platonic relationship was really nice in the book, and I think platonic relationships are way overlooked as is, so I enjoyed that portrayal. But this just feeds into that idea that every friendship needs to end in romance somehow. Tally herself is supposed to be witty and brave and intelligent with a strong sense of loyalty, and the entire time she is dying inside because she has to betray her friends, but it's for their own good, so she can save them. And then she finds out she wouldn't actually be saving them, so she dies inside again, realizing she has to betray the system she trusted and was loyal to. And she did a crappy thing taking David from Shay. She was selfish in that regard. It's another thing she feels extremely guilty about for the rest of the series that affects her relationship to Shay. They undid all of this in the movie. Tally is often seen cowering and crying. She doesn't have witty, confident dialogue and no back and forth with Dr. Cable. A lot of things happen to her accidentally instead of her taking the initiative to solve them. She does a lot of things that are straight up just dumb. We don't know why she likes David, who is supposed to be ugly to her, or why she gives up so quickly on wanting to be pretty. Her betrayal to Shay is way downplayed because there is no love triangle there. She doesn't have to deliberate as much between Peris and Shay because in this version, Peris just turns evil. Dr. Cable has been completely neutered. She is way less scary than she should be, and a lot dumber and more of a cartoonish villain in the movie. She's supposed to be a mix between like a secret agent and an army general with the mind of a scientist, but the movie makes her a manipulative, mad scientist politician. Movie Cable ends up disfigured, which is not a thing that happens in the book, and her fashion sense is totally different because, like I said before, it's like she's trying to be in the Hunger Games instead of wearing the gray specials uniform she wears in the books. In the movie, she seems to favor the color white and these really fashionable dresses, but Book Cable is ready for action and literally commands an army, so this wouldn't be practical for her. Book Cable is also very to the point and impatient. She's a straight shooter. Movie Cable pretends to be kind and concerned, but is actually manipulating things behind the scenes. I could honestly make an entire video about every single character and why the changes the movie made are bad. This brief summary does not do it justice. The Casting. One thing about the casting, I think Joey King should have played Tally more confidently. Although I think she looks fine as Tally. Although Tally is not supposed to have blue eyes, but I think I'm the only person in the whole world that cares about nitpicks like that. Shay looks fine as Shay, but why didn't they give her pigtails like she had in the book? But her body type fits Shay, since Shay is supposed to be skinny, so good job there. Shay is also supposed to have green eyes, but again, I think I'm the only person that nitpicks at that. And I really am not a fan of her acting, but I'm not sure if that's actually her, or the writing, or the directing. It's hard to tell with movies like these. Peris' actor is fine. I like his chemistry with Tally, but like I said before, they should have given him a fake nose or something to remove when they turned him pretty, because the fact that they changed nothing now makes all of that not make any sense. And I know I corrected myself earlier because I read that one comment about him apparently like having a prosthetic nose, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe I'm blind. David has zero chemistry with Tally at all. Just like with Shay, I don't know if he's a bad actor or if it's this specific movie, but I seriously hated every single David Tally scene. They had the spark of a dead fish. David and Tally's relationship just reminds me of every time I'm talking to someone's grandpa and he's like, "You remind me of my dead wife." And then I'm just kind of like, okay. Dr. Cable as an actress seemed okay, but like I said, they just completely changed her personality and made her worse, almost like they were trying to copy The Hunger Games, particularly Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Like, that's actually the first thing I thought of when I saw her. Croy actually was great. I loved Croy in this. He needed more screen time. And in the book, he's supposed to actually be ugly, but I find him to be probably the most attractive one in the movie, so I also think that's hilarious. The messaging. They miss so many opportunities to actually have a message. For example, in the books, there are mentions of changing one's skin color to match a standard. That seems like a pretty big deal, especially since race was blamed as one of the reasons for why humanity was so divided. So the pretties should have all been the same color, or at least all in the same general family of shades. This includes Dr. Cable, and I think that could have been a really good way to show how she was born one way, but forced to change who she was, and how that's actually a bad thing. In the books, when Tally sees a magazine showing all different kinds of models that were considered pretty, with different body types and skin colors, it is a shock to her. And honestly, that is a big thing that really does happen today, that is directly related to beauty standards. There really are people that go on extreme diets or damage themselves to change their skin just to be seen as prettier. Given how diverse the cast is in this movie, I think they should have brought up the topic of race instead of completely ignoring it, because I think it would have been helpful and relatable to a lot of people watching. Same thing with eating disorders. One of the main positives of the pretty surgery is that those disorders don't exist anymore, and Tally worries that those could come back again. But the movie is really cowardly when it comes to these very serious topics. The environment is the secondary concern of the books. They live in a time where the environment is safe and not actively being destroyed by people. The existence of the smoke threatens that, because they're trying to go back to the old ways, which involves cutting down and burning trees and hunting animals. That is a real problem that is always present throughout the series, because neither side is 100% right or wrong, and things aren't as black and white. The plot twist of the surgeries where they're messing with your brain does make the city look bad, but it's not like the city is doing everything wrong. It's a solution to mankind's problems, despite not exactly being ethical. But because they do have so much control over the population, it is true that they did save the planet. But the movie doesn't like nuanced thinking with gray areas, so it decides to completely make the city a villain by having them also destroy the environment with the orchids in order to force everyone to live in the cities. In the book, the orchids are left behind by the Rusties and are a reminder and a symbol of how bad things can get should they try to go back to how things were. And if they ever do try to make a sequel to this movie, they're destroying their own potential by dumbing down the story, since it's the push and pull between the two ideologies that fuels the entire conflict. Not every movie has to talk about serious things or have a serious message. In fact, I think it's obnoxious when people act like they all have to do that. But this specific series was written for that. It's about that. What is the message of the movie? Be a free thinker, I guess? But they're shoving that message down your throat while telling you to imitate these very radicalized characters. The book's characters aren't this black and white, and they're not as radicalized. Even Dr. Cable actually has reasons for doing what she does, other than, "Mwahaha, I want power and I'm evil." She actually isn't evil. It's been a while since I read the other books, but I remember her having like a breakdown at some point because she thinks she's doing the right thing. And the Smokies aren't all good either. David isn't a villain, but they all side-eye him when he wants to remove some trees because they're obstacles to their project. And even after they call him out on it, he doesn't agree with them. A major complaint a lot of people have is that the actors are too pretty to be in this movie, that they should have used actual ugly people, which again tells tells me they missed the mark. Guys, the whole point of the story is that you are pretty the way you are. You don't have to change yourself to fit a standard. They were brainwashed into thinking they are ugly, even though they are not. Except for Croy. He is actually ugly, but the actor they chose for him is not, and they failed at that. They failed to make the one canonically ugly person ugly. The world building. Despite the 3 exposition dumps in the beginning, they gave us next to no world building. The use of crash bracelets and the size and shape of the hoverboards is inconsistent. They don't show the extreme aversion Tally should be having to using fire and seeing old people. They act like Dr. Cable is the mastermind behind these surgeries, but that begs the question, who did the surgery on her then? Who removed her lesions when she became a doctor? Who is above her and why is she on their side? Because in the book, she is not the one in charge of all the regular surgeries. She is in charge of the specials, and she does end up creating her own special kind of special in the 3rd book, Specials, which I think is what Peris is supposed to be in the movie, but that is unrelated to the general populace. They don't show you how this world is sustainable because in the book, even if you drop trash on the ground, it gets absorbed and recycled. Everything is constantly being reused whether you want it to or not. All of their things, even their clothes, are seen as temporary and meaningless because they literally have a hole in the wall that basically 3D prints whatever they want using these recycled materials. The movie doesn't show how everything in the city is super safe, like the safety sparklers and the bungee jackets, and how that contradicts with the actual raw danger of the wild. It doesn't show little things like how no one knows how to write by hand anymore or that they don't eat animals. The pretties aren't that different looking from regular people when they're supposed to look extremely different. And what I think is interesting is that Shay's actress actually talked about everything they had to do to make her pretty. I quote, "Then to turn into the pretty version of Shay, it took so long and they had to cover up all my tattoos. They put a wig on me, full beat. They kind of pulled back my eyes and cheekbones to make me look snatched. I had so many cutlets in my push-up bra and I wore a silicone butt, and then I was wearing high heels the whole time, even in action sequences when I'm running away. They had to sew me into the dress. I couldn't really pee, so I was also very dehydrated in Atlanta in the heat. And then on top of that, there's CGI, there's aspects that happened in post-production. Like, I'm actually shocked they did all of that just to show her for like 2 seconds at the end of the movie. I genuinely think it was not necessary to sew her into a dress, and I feel like they could have allocated their resources very differently to make her more outlandish looking. I don't think a lot of logical choices were being made, especially since the difference in the final product are minimal. I was able to understand the movie because I know what the original story is, but I think someone that knows nothing about this universe is going to have a lot of questions, and this world will not feel real enough to them. My husband, who has never read the books, actually did try to watch the movie when it came out because he had heard me talk about the series before, so here are the thoughts of a person that has no prior knowledge of anything.
Okay, I can't do it. I can't do it.
Okay, what were you expecting?
I don't know, like a action movie, at least the quality of Divergent, probably not much higher, but it was so boring. It was like, it made Divergent look like a worthwhile watch. Nothing was happening. Oh, I probably didn't get more than 20 minutes into the movie. Nothing worthwhile. It just was an abysmal time.
And this is coming from a man that watched all of Supergirl and One Piece, the soundtrack. I actually enjoy at least one of the songs from this movie, and it's The Top by Natalie Jane. I haven't looked at the lyrics, so I don't know about the writing, but I like how it sounds, and it gets stuck in my head all the time. It's very catchy. I'm not a fan of the Such Great Heights cover when Tally is in New Pretty Town. That scene needed a lot more tension, so I disliked everything about how they presented it, and I also really like the original song, and I don't think the cover holds a candle to it. The rest of the soundtrack is okay. Nothing else stands out to me, except for the 2 songs I mentioned. David's little theme that plays whenever he's on screen is awful. It makes me think of a crinkly old man in a powdered wig. Oh, and there's a pretty terrible girl power Apple commercial song that plays during one of the hoverboarding scenes, and it makes me unreasonably angry. There's another song like that at the end too, when the kids are writing "The Smoke Lives in the Sky." I hated the sound design overall. I thought the sound effects they gave to the specials, those weird zoomies, they just make everything way goofier. They did not need those zoom sound effects. The costumes and the sets. The sets were fine. Almost everything was as how I imagined it in the book. Whatever differences there are, I already pointed them out. The only setting I actively hated was the special circumstances building, because it made the least sense, and it was super boring. There are a lot of background elements that I pointed out that don't make sense to me in a lot of the scenes, and so even though I think the overall vibes are fine, the execution is meh. The costumes are disappointing. The most interesting ones were Dr. Cable's outfits, but she's not supposed to be a fashionista, and also it looks like she's from the Hunger Games. Everyone else has such bland clothing. Even in the smoke, they don't have them wearing leather and animal skins. I have no idea what the heck David's shirt is supposed to be, but it's awful to look at. Like, I get that it's supposed to be handmade, but for a dude dude that's been sewing his own clothes his entire life, he sure is bad at it. And that shirt's not gonna do a darn thing in the winter cold. The clothing in New Pretty Town mostly looks like prom clothes. Considering how this is a futuristic setting with advanced technology, I would have liked to see something more innovative and shocking, kind of like what we see in high fashion. In the second book, Pretties, you do get some descriptions of things like animated tattoos and eyes with clocks in them. So that's also partly why fans didn't think the looks were extreme enough in the movie. Tally pretty much only wears her dorm clothes the entire time, but even in the book, she changed into an expedition outfit when she went to see Peris. So I just would have liked to see more variety there. I don't know why the specials had black outfits with blue glowing lines, because those outfits matched the wardens we saw at the beginning of the movie. I think a new kind of creature needs its own thing to stand out. This kind of implies that Peris is a glorified warden, but he's clearly more than that. He's superhuman. The writing. Aside from the plot holes, poor world building, and terrible pacing, I didn't like the writing of this movie. The dialogue was very on the nose to the point of being too obvious and direct, but also it didn't feel human. It's like they took the gist of what the dialogue in the book was, but took out all of the connective tissue that actually made it make sense. Again, it felt like they were trying to tick boxes, but completely ignored the craft of writing. I really don't know how to explain to you in words that make sense just how much these characters were not interacting with each other. The best way I can explain it is if you've ever done one of those murder mystery games where you're playing a character and you're waiting for someone to say a line that triggers your dialogue so you can reveal critical information, but then they never do because they forget. So as they're in the middle of talking about cake, you say, "Hey, I saw you push that lady down the stairs," because that's what's gonna move the story along. But it's completely out of place and no one knows how to react naturally to that. And then they're looking through their notes like, "Oh crap, I missed a paragraph of information, let me backtrack." And then while they're doing that, another character starts screaming about leprechauns because they missed their cue from 3 rounds ago, when that was relevant. The pacing was weird because they put a strange amount of time into all of these information dumps, which was really just the same information dump over and over again, when they could have used that time to do literally anything else. I also think the movie should have been longer, which is not a big ask since it's not a long movie. If they didn't change the plot so much, they wouldn't have to cram so many weird things into the end like they did. And a lot of the scenes were literally 10 seconds or less. I counted. The only thing I can think of is that they did these in one take, didn't get the angles right, or made too many mistakes, so they were just like, "Oh well, we'll use the 5 seconds of good footage we do have and move on. That'll do." Like they weren't confident in the scene and wanted to rush through it. The graphics and effects. Some of the graphics were pretty good, particularly in the beginning. I think they ran out of budget by the end. Most of the fire effects were terrible, especially the smoke lives. A lot of stuff was hidden in scenes that went way too fast or were shot too close so that you couldn't actually see what was going on. They really didn't want you lingering on the visuals. Even if they were good, I wouldn't be able to admire them because they flashed by too fast. Like, let me actually look at Shay up close. You put so much work into her, let me linger on it. But I can't because she doesn't get much screen time after her transformation. The graphics in Tally's dorm room were good, and the fireworks and stuff in New Pretty Town were good, and I enjoyed some of the creative choices. In conclusion, I never want to see this movie again. I've already had to watch it upwards of 10 times to get all of the info I needed for this review. I wanted it to be accurate and make sure I didn't miss anything, and now Netflix probably thinks this is my favorite movie. If they ever do make a sequel, I dread having to watch it, and you know I'll definitely be writing something about it that will take me another 6 months to a year to make. But I will do it because I am that obsessed of a fan. I don't plan on this video getting a lot of traction simply because it is an old topic, and I don't think there are that many people out there that care as much as I do about everything I shared. But I just needed to scream this into the void. I could not stop thinking about it. And the people in my real life need a break from my rambling. This is probably a healthier way to get it out that won't make them hate me. That being said, I have a lot of things I want to ramble about. Even if there's no movie, I want to still talk about the rest of the trilogy and the 4th book extras. Just in case you happen to be invested in the story and you don't want to do the reading yourself, I would be more than happy to break it down for you. And because the series itself isn't perfect, I also want to talk about what I like and dislike about the rest of the books and what I would change. There are also a bunch of other books I want to compare to their respective movies, like the Giver series is a good one, or the Hunger Games. I also have Dune and Princess Bride, and then there's also like 3 shelves full of books in my house that I have never read before because someone gave them to me, and I thought it would be fun to go through those one by one and give my thoughts. The one I'm reading right now is god-awful, and I need to complain about it. But I also have opinions on movies and video games, and just media in general, that I think would be fun to break down and discuss. That's the kind of videos I like to watch, is people giving their opinions, and I wanted to add to the conversations with my own ideas. So yeah, I have a lot of videos I can make. I don't know how long it will take me to make them, so I can't promise a timeline, but I might have to do a mixture of shorter, less detailed videos in between while I make the really long ones like these. But yeah, if you made it this far, tell me what your theory is for why there's a shirtless tattooed man in the woods. And I'll see you once I have written my next script, which will be on the sequel to Uglies, Pretties. Maybe, unless I get hyperfixated on a different idea first.